Su Zaicheng came to the 5 corpses. These 5 corpses are all wearing uniform dark red ninja costumes, with crossed darts and katana pinned to their waists. The identity is already very obvious, it is the ninja killers of the hand. Su Zaicheng randomly found a person and squatted down, tearing off the mask. This is an Asian face with 2 mustaches, similar to a florist but slightly different. It should be a chicken with feet. The clothes on his body were in good condition, and there were no obvious wounds, but his face was extremely ferocious, his eyes were glaring, and there was still a trace of fear left. Basically every ninja in the hand has trained himself since he was a child, and he is almost invincible to ordinary people in terms of physical resistance and mental ability. You can kill him, but you can't make him afraid, because he is not afraid of death. You can torture him, but they have tried all the horrible tortures in the world, and they will not betray the hand because of a small torture. They know that even if they survive because of this, the hand will not let them go. Therefore, people who know the hand will call them crazy ninjas, as the name suggests, crazy ninjas. However, with such a group of ninjas, at the moment's eyes were frightened, looking horrified. It was obvious that he had suffered horrific torture during his lifetime. And it should be spiritual. The corner of Su Zaicheng's mouth twitched, he took out the bow of elements and burned them one by one, destroying the corpses and obliterating the traces. Okay, let's go. Su Zaicheng rubbed Jiali's little head, took her little hand, and went back to the villa. The hand ninja had figured out where he was. He also understands that the hand may have issued a kill order for him. Harmless though. Come 1 to kill 1, come 2 to kill 1 pair. Not to mention Jiali, even Su Zaicheng can easily arrange these ninjas who are just trained ordinary people. After this period of time passes, he may find an opportunity to talk with Mrs. Gao. In the next few days, Su Zaicheng and Jiali were playing around. Games, singing, swimming, playing ball. Although Su Zaicheng had already played it before, now it is a completely different feeling to play with Jiali. The only pity is that this little girl, Jiali, really lives up to her reputation as omniscient and omnipotent. She can play with almost everything, and she can play with flying skills. Sometimes omniscience is not necessarily a good thing. While Su Zaicheng and Jiali are relaxing and playing. Somewhere in the United States, the owner of the SHIELD base. Not long ago, the superior sent a notification that all SHIELD agents were retreating in an orderly manner. Nick Fury also rushed to the base by helicopter. As Nick Fury's exclusive follower, Phil Coulson was waiting for Nick Fury's arrival at the base early on. How's the situation? All the surrounding agents are in emergency retreat. Wearing a black windbreaker, Nick Fury asked Phil Coulson on the side while walking towards the underground base. 4 hours ago, Dr. Hillwig detected a burst of energy from the Rubik's Cube. Phil Coulson replied. The space agency did not authorize the doctor to conduct tests. Nick Fury said calmly. There were no tests and he wasn't even in the room. Phil Coulson went on to answer. It's an automatic trigger, it just activates. What's the energy level now? Ascending. After confirming that the doctor cannot be closed, an emergency evacuation has been ordered. How long will it take for all to evacuate? Nick Fury looked a little headache. So much has happened during this time. Big monster abominations, bounty hunters, a storm on a dock in Manhattan, and now the Tesseract. It can be cleared in half an hour, Phil Coulson said. Hurry up. Nick Fury nodded, and went to the laboratory with the Tesseract together with Agent Hill. Phil Coulson continued to direct the evacuation. Sir, I don't think it's useless to evacuate. Hill agent followed behind Nick Fury and said. Should they be allowed to sleep at home? Nick Fury said. He definitely knows that evacuation is useless, because if the energy of the Tesseract continues to rise, then the final result may be that no one on the entire Earth will be spared, and even the entire Earth will be directly annihilated. At that time, it is obviously useless to hide anywhere. If we can't secure control of the Tesseract's energy, I feel. Before Agent Hill could speak, Nick Fury interrupted her. Unless it's the end of the world, everything that should be done must be done. Now I want you to ensure that the second stage prototype can be transferred safely, and all related equipment will be transported. Walk. Yes, sir. Hill agent looked helpless, but Nick Fury was right. Sudden. The Tesseract placed in the instrument began to flicker greatly, and waves of incomparably terrifying energy radiated outward. SHIELD's entire base, including its location, trembled. Nick Fury was taken aback, and immediately went to his laboratory. Doctor, what happened? He asked immediately. The Tesseract is constantly emitting jamming and radiation. Dr. Hillwig looked a little flustered. looking at the rapidly increasing data on the computer, just about to say something. I saw violent energy fluctuations suddenly appearing in the place where the tesseract was placed, gradually turning into a vortex, and buzzing sounds one after another. When this energy condenses to an extreme, a wave of unparalleled energy emanates from the center of the tesseract. Actually, a large space wormhole slowly opened in the space ahead. Looking inside, it was a vast starry sky. Nick Fury, Dr. Hillwig and the surrounding agents all looked dumbfounded. Moment. The space wormhole opened to the extremes suddenly shattered. Nick Fury and the others looked closely, and there was a half-kneeling figure on the place where the space wormhole was originally located. The figure stood up slowly. He was dressed strangely and held a scepter in his hand. He, of course, is Loki. This scene seemed to shock everyone. Nick Fury shouted from the air, "Please put down your spears." Loki glanced blankly at the scepter in his hand, then pointed the scepter at the agents holding rifles in front of him. The energy was condensed in an instant, and shot out with a buzz. The sudden situation caused all the agents present to point their guns at Loki and start shooting wildly. However, even the most powerful trolls only made Loki's footsteps stop slightly, and did not cause any damage. On the contrary, within a few seconds, Loki dealt with the agents completely. Then, Loki pointed the scepter inlaid with mind gem at Hawkeye Barton's chest just like in the plot. A wave of energy is slowly output. You are special. Barton's eyes gradually darkened, slowly turned back to the original appearance. Seeing this situation, Loki showed a smile at the corner of his mouth, slowly retracted the scepter, and then went to control the next agent. At this time, Nick Fury secretly took out the tesseract from the device, put it in the box, and was about to leave. "Put down the box," Loki said suddenly. "I really need it." He really needs the tesseract to invade Earth. There's no need to be so nervous, is there? Nick Fury turned his back to Loki, said, "Definitely necessary." Loki held the scepter in his hand, and said, "The reason why the old man came to the old man's house is to pay back money." Nick Fury turned slowly, looking Loki squarely. "I am Loki, from the realm of the gods." Loki said, "I have a great mission that you cannot comprehend." Loki. Dr. Hillwig, who was treating the agent next to him, stood up. "Are you Thor's brother?" Dr. Hillwig is Jane's teacher, the one who helped Thor. "We have no enmity with you." Nick Fury squinted at Loki. "The ants have nothing to do with your shoes." Loki raised his head proudly, showing his nostrils. "So, you want to trample us to death?" Nick Fury continued. Loki chuckled, turned around suddenly, pointed the scepter at Dr. Hillwig's heart, and controlled it. "Sir, Commander Fury is stalling for time." At this time, Barton, who was controlled by Loki, seemed to have discovered something, walked to Loki's side, and said, "Soon this place will be bombed, we will be buried under the pile of cloth." "A pile of stones hundreds of meters away." Nick Fury added, "It's like pyramids." "He's right, the portals are starting to crumble." Dr. Hillwig, who was staring at the computer, said, "There are still 2 minutes before the complete subversion." "Okay." Loki shrugged. Barton pulled out his pistol without any hesitation, and knocked Nick Fury to the ground with one shot. Immediately afterwards, go forward with Loki to pick up the box containing the tesseract, and escape from the shield base here. And after a few minutes of chasing, all agents have been evacuated. Boom. With a loud noise, the entire shield base suddenly exploded, including all the buildings underground, which were crushed into stones at this moment and collapsed. Some of the agents who were chasing Loki along with Hill are crushed in the tunnel. Loki was not injured at all, and together with Barton and other controlled people, he left the shield base with tesseract. "Sir, there are a lot of people under the pressure, and I don't know how many will survive." Hill suffered a lot of injuries, took out the walkie-talkie from his pocket, and said, "Listen to Hill." Nick Fury was silent for a while. "Phil Coulson, you go back to the base and issue a level 7 alert. Judging from the current situation, the war has already begun." Phil Coulson was silent for a long time. "What shall we do?" Nick Fury didn't speak. He just silently looked at the ruins not far away. "Avengers, it's time to rally." Urgently recalled Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, who was on a mission, and went to Calcutta, India to recruit Green Titan Bruce Banner. At the same time, he notified Captain America Steve Rogers, who had just been unfrozen not long ago. Well, this guy doesn't need to say much, after all, he was originally a member of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Avengers must have his seat. As for Iron Man Tony Stark, it is by Phil Coulson. The efficiency of S.H.I.E.L.D. is quite fast. Just a few days later. On an aircraft carrier. Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff collection. I think I should leave quickly. Natasha Romanoff looked at the two unusual men in front of her and shrugged. I won't be able to breathe later. Is this still a submarine? There's a hint of self-deprecation in Bruce Banner's words. Looks like I'm going to be locked in a glass case. Unfortunately, it was different from what he thought. This aircraft carrier raised two total 4 drone-like wings from the left and right respectively, and took off directly from the sea in a straight line. Oh, Bruce Banner froze. This is worse. The agents next to them put on their oxygen masks one after another, and entered the ship, whether it was an aircraft carrier or an airplane. Aircraft carrier, in the exclusive office of the Avengers. Hi Ren. Nick Fury held out his hand. You are welcome. Thank you for your kind invitation. Bruce Banner shook hands with Nick Fury and asked, so, how long are you going to keep me? As long as you find the Tesseract, you can go wherever you want. Nick Fury laughed. In this regard, Bruce Banner nodded and said yes. Steve also came over at this time, and handed Nick Fury a 10-meter bill. This is the bet he made with Nick Fury before, and now it's clear who wins and who loses. Nick Fury smiled silently and put the money in his pocket. Sir, Stark's got it, if nothing else. At this time, Phil Coulson, who had just arranged various matters in the ship, came to Nick Fury and glanced at the few people nearby. As a die-hard fan of Captain America, he focused on Captain America and nodded to Captain America, without the slightest intention to hide, and then said to Nick Fury, what should we do next? This is also an attitude. Nick Fury wants to express it through Phil Coulson. It probably means that since you have joined the formed team, even if it is only temporarily, they will not hide anything, just do it at ease up. Nick Fury put his hands behind his back, squinted his one eye, and looked around at the few people in front of him. Shaking his head slightly. Not enough, it's not enough. Just to be on the safe side, there's still one left. It's just that the appearance fee for this one may be more expensive. I'm not sure if I can get it. At the end, a wry smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He had just tricked someone with his front foot, and wanted to invite him out of the mountain with his back foot. If he didn't get cheated hard, he wouldn't believe it. Natasha Romanoff seemed to think of something. Her brows were slightly frowned, and her tone was slightly hesitant. Are you sure you want to find him? Okay. Nick Fury nodded slightly, and a gleam flashed in his eyes. This is a global war, there can be no mistakes, and I will do my best at all costs. The vague attitude of the two aroused the curiosity of Steve Rogers and Bruce Banner. Especially for that person in the two populations. Su Zaicheng played with Jiali for several days. Su Zaicheng didn't know anything about what happened during this period of time. After all, some of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s bases are very secretive. Even if they are blown up, not many people will know about them, and those who know are even less likely to spread the word, so New York is actually still the same as before, and there is no such thing as being about to be invaded by aliens. Battle color. Definitely, the most important thing is that he is in the state of keep his ears off the window during the rest time. Anyway, I don't accept the task, so how you do it is none of my business. When I was about to leave the mountain, I received a call. Mr. Su? It's Phil Coulson on the phone. Phil Coulson. Su Zaicheng was slightly taken aback, and said with a light smile, if you have a task, just say it, if you don't have a task, goodbye. Definitely yes, definitely yes. Phil Coulson was ashamed. Some things happened in recently, so I want to hire you to catch a district. Who? Loki. It is said that he is a person from God's domain. Loki. Su Zaicheng narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems that the plot has developed to the level of Avengers Alliance. Tesseract has been stolen, and now come to find yourself to throw Rocky? Employment amount. He said lightly. Billion USD. Phil Coulson wiped his brow with cold sweat, said. A billion? A sneer curled up at the corner of Su Zaicheng's mouth. Phil Coulson agent, let your immediate boss come and talk to me. A few days ago, I just lured Thor and other idiots to trick me. Now I want to catch Loki as a god, and spend $1 billion to get it done. What are you dreaming of? This. Just as Phil Coulson was about to say something, there was some movement on the other end of the phone, and another person changed. I'm right here. Nick Fury said. Nick Fury. Su Zaicheng squinted his eyes and smiled falsely. I seem to have been attacked by unknown people some time ago, and one of them claimed, oh no, it was Thor, and he transformed himself. Do you think the mercenary should be promoted this time? $1.5 billion? No problem. Nick Fury was not silent, nodded. $2 billion. Su Zaicheng raised the price again. No problem. This time Nick Fury was silent for a while, but finally nodded. Readily. Su Zicheng laughed suddenly. 2.5 billion. Nick Fury suppressed the anger in his heart, and said calmly, most of our funds have already been invested in another project, 2.5 billion, and we really can't get it out. Can't get it out? Are you kidding me? Su Zicheng sneered. Okay. Then 3 billion, no credit. Give me an answer before evening, otherwise, you will bear the consequences. After speaking, he hung up the phone directly. He was worrying about how to trick Nick Fury. Now Nick Fury called himself, isn't he looking for a trap? As for the last sentence, yes, the threat is clear. As long as Nick Fury doesn't want to add another bounty hunter to his enemies list, he'll have to secure the money. Nick Fury originally cheated Su Zicheng and was wrong. Although he has a thick skin and may not care about being teased. But now this situation is not a question of whether to fight or not. First came Loki from God's domain, and then the bounty hunter. Both of them are of the same magnitude. If they both become enemies, not to mention whether they will fight, but only enemies, the pressure of their shield is not ordinary, the general doubling, but the upward increase of the geometric number. This money must be given, or not given. Therefore, Su Zicheng had the confidence to add another 500 million at the end. Nick Fury listened to the blind tone on the phone with a dark face. It took a long time to put down the phone. As Su Zicheng predicted, Nick Fury didn't dare to gamble. If it was before, he might have thought of not giving money, but now. Forget it. Loki from God's domain is staring at the earth. How deadly does he, Nick Fury, have to be to make a mistake at this juncture? F*K. Nick Fury was frowning, and his dark face darkened again. If he could have predicted today's situation, he shouldn't have been so clever back then. Just because of a little cleverness, the transaction that could have been done with 1 billion yuan became 3 billion yuan, from more than 7 billion soft sister coins to more than 20 billion soft sister coins. Isn't it 3 billion? Nick Fury gritted his teeth. SHIELD currently only has more than 1 billion funds available for use, and the rest cannot be moved no matter what. If there is a slight problem with a giant like SHIELD, it will collapse. There is no comparison with Tony. After all, Tony is his own company. He can play as he wants. How about Nick Fury? He is the director, and he has real power, but many opinions need to be approved by the upper management. I will also be stinked by the top. So, there is only one last way left. Go to a video conference now. Although Nick Fury doesn't want to face those bullshit honest customers anyway, but there is no way to do it. The United States is a capitalist country. Who can be an honest customer? Which family is not rich? It's not as good as Tony's richest man, but it's okay for a few people to spend 2 billion. It depends on what to use in exchange and persuasion. Definitely, it is inevitable to be complained in the end. At dusk, Su Zicheng glanced at Jiali, rubbed the little girl's head, and said, I have something to go out for a few days, so you can stay at home and watch TV and play games, okay? Gali pouted. I'm going too. What are you going to do? Su Zicheng rolled his eyes. Good boy, I'll be back soon, just to catch someone. Once Jiali leaves, won't everything be settled? At that time, how can he continue to make money? Besides, Su Zicheng, am not a man who eats soft food. Jia Lijiang is her business, not mine. Su Zicheng hummed in his heart. Seeing this, Jiali had no choice but to reluctantly nod her head. The little guy is just a little boring and likes to be a follower, but sometimes he is very sensible. Well, it's still a bit weird to call a Gali who doesn't know how much hail is a little guy. After Su Zicheng comforted a wave of little Jiali. I got a call from Nick Fury. How about it? Although Su Zicheng was asking, his tone was very schadenfreude. Nailed it. Nick Fury's tone was stiff, and he seemed not in a good mood. 3 billion, after capturing Loki, I will call into your account. Ha 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 ha. Su Zicheng didn't feel offended by the tone at all, but felt comfortable all over. Because the tougher Nick Fury's tone was, the worse he was trained, that is, the worse he was pitted by Su Zicheng. It's too late for him to be happy. How could he feel offended? Have Natasha Romanoff come pick me up from my house. Su Zicheng suppressed his heart and laughed wildly. I will help you catch people tonight. Beep beep. Listening to the blind voice on the phone, Nick Fury sighed. Tonight? It would be great if I could catch it tonight. The 300 million spent is not a loss. However, it still hurts to think about it. After all, Su Zicheng was short of shouting the word robbery on his neck with a knife holder. If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have played that clever trick. Natasha Romanoff, go to New York, Queens. After Su Zicheng hung up the phone, he found that there was an extra task in the system, which was a task belonging to 3 billion. In fact, to be honest, the hiring fee for this task of catching Loki is at most 2 billion within the range determined by the system, and if there is more, the task will not count. However, the bounty hunter system is still very user-friendly, and Su Zicheng pits Nick Fury by default. It was detected that Nick Fury cheated Su Zicheng before, which in turn made Su Zicheng cheat Nick Fury, and it is not unreasonable. So this 1 billion task is officially entered into the system. Head off. Su Zicheng once again put on the hunter suit that has not been seen for a long time, with the bow of elements on his back. Glancing at his pitiful 4.8 million balance, he sighed sadly. After careful calculation, there are actually more than 10 days without improving strength, and the balance is only 4.8 million. This 4.8 million may be a lot to him before, but now, his whole body is full of LV.3 and IV.4 skills, so 4.8 million is just a drop in the bucket. But thinking of the 3 billion bounty, he soon cheered up again, staring extremely hotly. Tonight, I will make my purse bulge. I still have to grow fat. After Su Zicheng hung up the phone, he headed for his hometown in Queens. The place Su Zicheng released, the widow's sister Natasha Romanoff must have gone to pick her up nearby. However, his speed is not very fast, but advances at a constant speed. Natasha Romanoff needs time even if he launches a fighter plane. According to Su Zicheng's calculation, if he goes at his own speed, when he arrives, Natasha Romanoff should also arrive. Sure enough, just as he expected, a stealth fighter plane that can only be seen with the naked eye is floating in a deep mountain not far from Su Zicheng's hometown in Queens. The telepathy came out through the body. In the driver's seat is Natasha Romanoff. After all, Natasha Romanoff is a level 10 agent, so it is not a big problem to fly a fighter. Hey, Agent Romanov. Su Zicheng stood under the fighter plane, using the ability of mind control to invade Natasha Romanoff's mind, and said. The sudden sound startled Natasha Romanoff, but he soon breathed a sigh of relief. I really don't understand why you have so many scary abilities. Natasha Romanoff slowly landed the fighter plane, pressed the button to open the cabin, and said with emotion, obviously each one is very powerful when taken out, but it is condensed on one person. Oh? Su Zicheng got on the fighter plane and shrugged. Maybe I'm more handsome. Yes. Natasha Romanoff seemed to be relaxed, but she was nervous and said, why are you wearing a hood? Relax. Am I that scary? Su Zicheng spread his hands, smiled evilly and said, maybe you can see my face when I take a shower. He has pitted Nick Fury for billions. He is in a good mood now and does not suggest fighting with Natasha Romanoff. The corner of Natasha Romanoff's mouth twitched, not going to continue this topic. I got you. Where are we going next? Okay. Su Zicheng stroked his chin. Take a rest for the night and tell you tomorrow. He actually knew where Loki would go. According to the current timeline, if there are no accidents, Loki will appear in Stuttgart, Germany tomorrow, and Barton will take this opportunity to secretly sneak into Shia's laboratory to steal things. This spot came out a bit when I was watching a movie. Roughly calculated. The time difference between the United States and Germany is about 6 hours. You can leave tomorrow afternoon. When you arrive in Germany, it should be 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Loki must be there at that time. He didn't even bother to track down the paper cranes. Well, bullshit. To be on the safe side, Su Zicheng still planned to use a chasing paper crane. Wait for me all night, don't bother me. Su Zicheng took out the tracking paper crane, and the whole person devoted himself to tracking the paper crane, thinking of Loki in his heart. Soon. Track paper cranes activate. Start tracking Loki. The speed of tracking paper cranes is not slow, but it is definitely not fast. If Loki is really in Germany now, then the flight time needed to track the origami crane is about 1 night. Looked at Su Zicheng as if he really slept on the fighter plane. Natasha Romanoff sighed helplessly and switched the fighter to Nick Fury's channel. Natasha Romanoff, how's it going? Nick Fury has been here too, asked. People received it. Natasha Romanoff glanced at Su Zicheng, who was leaning on the fighter plane without any movement, but he said he would give him 1 night, don't disturb him, and fell asleep on the fighter plane. Come back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury was silent for a long time, and said, don't touch him, do what he says. Sleep over? He definitely didn't think that Su Zicheng could fall asleep so simply. Judging from the ability shown by Su Zicheng in recent missions, he may still have the ability to find people. Otherwise, how would he know where Mjolnir is? And how did he find that hapless guy from the Rand group? I'm afraid this night is the time to look for Loki, and the results may come out tomorrow. As for taking the opportunity to kill Su Zaicheng, he definitely thought about it, but just dismissed it after a moment. He would think of it, wouldn't Su Zaicheng? Not to mention that this guy's missiles can't break the defense, how to kill him. So, in the end Nick Fury still decided to wait the whole night and wait for Su Zaicheng to wake up. Although Su Zaicheng obviously backhanded and forgot about the bragging just now. But Su Zaicheng said that he did it for S.H.I.E.L.D. After all, this is to ensure that Loki can be found and captured safely, otherwise, he can go directly to Germany. As to whether he will be found, then there is no guarantee. Natasha Romanoff returned to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base in the fighter plane. Su Zaicheng, on the other hand, sat firmly on the spot, motionless. Natasha Romanoff, is this the guy Nick Fury sent here for? Steve Rogers squinted his eyes. Is it reliable? Natasha Romanoff nodded. Bruce should have seen how good he is. This guy. Bruce Banner looked at Su Zaicheng from afar, with a glint of darkness in his eyes. Feel sorry. He covered his head and quickly suppressed the tyrannical and warlike emotions in his heart. Definitely, it wasn't an emotion he originally had, but a Green Titan Hulk's. After all, he had personally witnessed the scene where Su Zaicheng fought Hulk's great enemy, Abomination, and hung up the Abomination to fight. But at that time Hulk was sleeping, not face to face. But seeing Su Zaicheng in a waking state now, he couldn't help it, which naturally aroused Hulk's belligerence and anger again, wishing he could get out of Bruce Banner's body and fight Su Zaicheng now. No way, Hulk is so simple and brainless, he is not as smart as Bruce Banner. Today's Hulk is just a mighty beast. In its view, Su Zaicheng snatched its prey, killed his prey. That's right, killed its prey, not helped it kill its prey. It's not a word, meaning across the sea. Fortunately, Bruce Banner cultivated himself during this period of time, so he was able to suppress this anger forcibly. Oh. Things don't look right. Natasha Romanoff once saw the scene where Bruce Banner turned into Hulk, and that was it, and it gave me a headache. The two things she fears the most come together? As for Captain America Steve Rogers, he was confused because he was still in the ice when Su Zaicheng was raging in New York. Huh. Let's rest for the night first. Natasha Romanoff shook her head and left the place. 10 o'clock the next morning. Su Zaicheng, who had been sitting there all night without moving, moved. He slowly raised his head and looked at the surveillance camera not far away. Nick Fury, now head to Stuttgart, Germany. Su Zaicheng's spiritual power last night was spent in tracking the paper cranes. As he expected, he tracked the paper cranes all the way, crossed several borders, and entered Stuttgart, Germany. It is also the place in the movie where the party is held and Loki is bubbling. Nick Fury, who has been staring at the monitor, said he received it, and looked at Steve Rogers, who was already on standby, the captain. It's obvious what he means. Steve Rogers nodded, wearing a star-striped uniform and a shield, and joined Natasha Romanoff in the jet. The fighter jets took off quickly, looking at the back of the fighter plane. Nick Fury said to the Hill agent behind him, the satellite search system focuses on Stuttgart, Germany, and if there is any discovery, let us know immediately. In addition, it is necessary to notify the S.H.I.E.L.D. in Germany, arrange the entry procedures, and give Natasha Romanoff and others a green light all the way. Otherwise, the fighter plane is easily taken down. This time Natasha Romanoff is still in charge of an agent whose name is not known with her next to the driver's seat. There are only 4 people on the fighter plane. Su Zaicheng, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and that unknown agent. Su Zaicheng was still sitting steadily on his seat with half-closed eyes, using his telepathic ability to silently observe Captain America. Pretty much what he thought. Captain America's physical fitness is not strong, probably around 10, and the super soldier serum is like that. But it doesn't matter, after all, Captain America is a bug, and its physical fitness is obviously lower than that of superheroes, supervillains, but it is hard to rely on Vibranium shield and they can make a 50-50 split. Moreover, Captain America's shield also comes with a buff that attracts hatred. Such a mortal who is afraid of guns, when fighting against him, the villain can kick but refuses to fight, and greets the shield frantically. And when Su Zaicheng was observing Captain America Steve Rogers was also quietly watching him. For some reason, Steve Rogers instinctively felt that Su Zaicheng was not a good person. Steve Rogers didn't like his temperament very much, and he always felt that he was plotting something wrong. Maybe it's because Su Zaicheng is a bounty hunter who hides in the shadows, and Steve Rogers is the positive figure of Wei Guangzhong? Oh, Maybe not both. Steve Rogers' instincts are still spot on. After all, Su Zaicheng is really trying to plot something wrong. From the United States to Germany, it takes about 7 hours for a civil aviation plane, but after all, it is a fighter plane produced by SHIELD, and the road is unimpeded, so the speed is naturally much faster than that of a civil aviation plane. It only takes about 4 hours to get there. Definitely, this is all approximate. If you want to calculate the time from New York to Stuttgart accurately, you can't calculate it. In short, it will not be too bad, and it will not exceed 1 hour. They set off at 10 a.m. the United States time. After arriving in Stuttgart, it should be around 2 p.m., plus the time difference between the United States and Germany. After arriving in Germany, the local time should be 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. Just the beginning of the evening in Stuttgart. 1 to 30 p.m. The United States time, 7 to 30 p.m. German time. There is only half an hour left before Su Zaicheng and others arrive in Germany. In the SHIELD base, Nick Fury and Bruce Banner sit in the command center, keeping an eye on places around the world where Loki may appear. Sir. At this time, Hill, who was in charge of keeping an eye on Stuttgart, suddenly came to Nick Fury. I found Loki. Where? Nick Fury put his hands behind his back and hurriedly followed behind you. Hill glanced at the impact captured by the satellite on the computer and the roadside camera, glanced at Nick Fury, and said deeply, it's in Stuttgart, Germany, the scene of the party that will start soon. Same as Sue said. Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. But at the same time, he felt inexplicably strange. Why did this Loki suddenly appear? Loki didn't even hide. Could it be that they SHIELD originally were able to find him at this time, but they were tricked by Su Zaicheng? If Su Zaicheng read this idea, he would probably die of laughter on the spot. Because the black marinated egg is right. Loki appeared to attract all the attention of people like SHIELD and Nick Fury, just to seduce them. How could he still hide? He just showed up in Stuttgart on purpose. Just to tell SHIELD, Loki, I'm here, come and catch me. If there is no Su Zaicheng, he will still be arrested, because this is part of his plan. He was in charge of getting the attention of SHIELD, and Hawkeye Barton was in charge of stealing metal bowls at the Shea Institute of Physics next door. As for Su Zaicheng, he definitely knows that Loki is just a decoy. But does it have anything to do with him? Su Zaicheng said that his task is only to catch Loki, and he has no obligation to arrange the next thing. He is just a little butterfly in the Marvel world who uses his foresight of the plot to make money. Stuttgart. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the party officially began. The melodious violin sounded, and the upper-class people were wearing dresses and suits, holding champagne and red wine in their hands, discussing the content of tonight's party, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. But what they don't know is that under this harmonious atmosphere, there is an arm wrestling between two powerful organizations. It is not an exaggeration to say that the undercurrent is surging. If you are not careful, you will be swept into pieces, not even slag left. Soon. This harmonious atmosphere was immediately broken. Loki broke into the party wearing a suit. They also hijacked a boss and used a triangular device to copy his face, while Barton on the other side accepted it simultaneously and opened the door of the institute. Looking at the terrified mortal in front of him, Loki held the scepter in his hand, and the golden light gradually bloomed on his body. After a flash of golden light, the suit quickly turned into Loki's divine costume, with two big horns peeking out like unicorns on his head, wearing a green cloak, and looking extremely arrogant. All these upper-class guys in suits and ties were forced into a small park outside the building. Boom. With a wave of the scepter, a speeding taxi was blown away. Kneel down. Loki's indifferent voice echoed throughout the room. But everyone present is a respectable person. How could they really kneel down because of Loki's words? They still want to escape. However, the crowd didn't escape a few steps before there was an extra Loki in the path ahead of them. Kneel down. Kneel down. Kneel down. A total of 4 Loki duplications stand at the 4 corners of the park, forming a square. I said. Loki's real body slowly walked out a few steps, and the scepter slammed the ground hard, roaring. Immediately, kneel down. The 4 duplication scepters shine with strange light. This scene immediately frightened the crowd enough. After the first person knelt down, they all knelt down one after another. Looking at the terrified faces of the crowd, Loki couldn't help but smile. He opened his arms, as if he saw the time when one person was below 10,000 after the successful invasion of the Earth. Isn't that simple? Isn't that what you were born to do? This is the unspoken truth of human beings. The lure of freedom robs you of the joy of life. You are crazily pursuing power and status, but in fact you are full of servility in your bones, and sooner or later you will succumb to your rulers. The more he said, the bigger the smile on Loki's face became. Looking at these people kneeling on the ground, he thought to himself, isn't this what I want? Power. Endless power. However, at this time, a white-haired old man stood up. Although his body was hunched over, he looked straight at Loki without fear. But not to someone like you. It has to be said that if the old man doesn't speak, he will act, but once he speaks, he will be astonishing. The other kneeling people looked at the old man with a hint of admiration in their surprised eyes. Because what the old man said was exactly what they wanted to say but were afraid to say. I am unique. Loki's smile faded away. There are too many shameless people like you. The old man mocked ruthlessly. If you were talking about dressing up, then I think it may really be unique. Loki laughs again. He slowly raised the scepter in his hand. Look at this old guy. As he spoke, he slowly aimed the scepter at the old man, and a wave of azure blue energy quickly condensed. He is your role model. The old man's expression changed slightly. Although this situation was expected when I stood up. But in the face of death, it is inevitable that a trace of emotion called fear will arise. The energy cannon was condensed and shot out almost instantly. Just at the moment. Suddenly a circular star-striped shield flew out of midair. Just blocked the energy cannon in the middle, and stuck it on the ground with undiminished power. And bounced it back to Loki. Unexpectedly, such a sudden event, Loki was caught off guard and was directly hit by the energy cannon, and he lay on the ground in a state of embarrassment. Next moment, only two figures fell to the ground. One was wearing a black windbreaker, holding a bow and arrow, and the other was wearing a star-striped tights, which set off the large muscles on his body with great impact. The two were Su Zaicheng and Captain America Steve Rogers, who had just arrived. Sorry, I snatched your shield just now in an emergency. Su Zaicheng shrugged to Steve Rogers beside him. The shield was not thrown by Steve Rogers just now, but he, Su Zaicheng, directly snatched it and threw it from the fighter plane, blocking the energy cannon for the old man. Fine. Steve Rogers shook his head. As the great and upright Captain America, he naturally doesn't care about these small things. As long as he can save people, it's okay. Exhaling a breath, he squatted down and pulled out the shield that was half stuck in the concrete floor with great difficulty, and looked at Loki. Su Zaicheng possessed mind-reading skills, so naturally seeing that Steve Rogers had read all his thoughts, he chuckled, and slowly pulled the bow of the elements away, and the bow and arrow slowly condensed, aiming at Loki. Moose boy, your speech is over. Elemental bows and arrows condense. Loki, who was beaten to the ground, had already reacted, because this was exactly what he wanted. It's just that he was a little caught off guard by being hit by the energy cannon. But also harmless. Ordinary people would probably die suddenly if they were hit by an energy cannon, but Loki is different. He is a Protoss from Asgard, and his physical fitness is many times stronger than ordinary people. Coupled with the equipment on his body, Loki actually only suffered from the impact, but the real damage was not much. It's a soldier. Loki raised his head suddenly, looked at Su Zaicheng and Captain America in front, and suddenly showed a smile on his face. There is also a bounty hunter who likes money. He was not surprised at the arrival of Su Zaicheng in his heart. Because Loki made preparations for before invading the Earth, many people can hardly imagine. Even Su Zaicheng has considered it. Although Su Zaicheng is very powerful, Loki is not afraid at all. Because, he is God. Soldier, you're out of date. I'm afraid it's not me who is obsolete. Steve Rogers replied, but found that Loki was not paying attention to him at all. After leaving a sentence, he looked at Su Zaicheng. With a persuasive expression on his face, you lost his way towards Su Zaicheng. Bounty hunters. What are they made for? Money. Loki said as he walked, his tone full of temptation. I can give you money, endless money. Hundreds of billions, trillions. This is nothing but the money of the mortal world. I can make you the money of the universe forever, and become a unique bounty hunter. You don't even need to follow me, I'll give you endless money. Look. This outdated old soldier next to him, as long as you kill him, I will let you have what you want. Loki is clever and cunning, both good and evil. In Norse mythology, he is the god of trickery. Compared with Thor, Loki's strength is not very strong, but he can dig out the deepest desires in the hearts of people around him with a single word. If you add scepter. Loki had already quietly walked to Su Zaicheng's side, and immediately aimed the scepter at his chest. But Su Zaichang stood there blankly holding the elemental bow that condensed the bow and arrow, as if he had really been hypnotic ability, and was struggling in his heart whether to agree to Loki. Captain America Steve Rogers panicked and hurried forward to stop Loki. Unfortunately, in front of Loki, Steve Rogers seemed to have lost his 50-50 strength, and was beaten to the ground by Loki a few times. After all, Captain America is just the pinnacle of human beings, and it's just a 50-50 split in the movie. In front of Loki, a kind of intelligent god who doesn't rely on his physique to make a living, he can please him. If it weren't for the shield, he would have died a long time ago. Up. Born unequal, the pinnacle of human beings is just the starting point of their god race. After knocking Steve Rogers down, Lu Ji looked at Su Zaichang again. Compared to Steve Rogers, an old-fashioned and not very strong veteran, Loki values Su Zaichang more. He had seen the scene of Su Zaichang fighting the abomination. This kind of thing is hard for him to achieve. However, as a noble god, Loki doesn't feel that his strength is above everything else. In his opinion, he is a noble god, and the guy in front of him is just an ordinary person with weaker strength. As long as they are ordinary people, they have desires and can be controlled by themselves. In addition, his scepter has gradually moved in front of Su Zaichang. Even if the other party does not answer, he can still control it, just like controlling Hawkeye and Dr. Hillwig. Pity. His little calculation was wrong. Su Zaichang used mind-reading skills to read the thoughts in Loki's mind in detail. I am God, noble gods, foolish mortals. The second illness is very serious, lil Loki. There was no fluctuation in his heart, and he almost couldn't help laughing out loud. As the god of intrigue, Loki is really terrifying in terms of arousing people's desires. Unfortunately, that is for ordinary people. Su Zaichang's mental strength has long been strengthened to a peak by the ability controlled by the mind, and he is not affected by Loki at all. Loki's tricks are so stupid. Su Zaichang is not really the kind of guy who can't walk when he sees money. And the seduction is not the point, the money he likes is not that kind of money. It's like people like grapefruit, but Loki drew an orange to seduce him. It makes people laugh. See, Su Zaichang has been silent. Loki moved the scepter slowly, still. Just when the scepter was only 1 centimeter away from Su Zaichang's chest. You elk boy is kind of funny, the voice fell. The elemental arrows condensed by the elemental bow pierced through the air with a whoosh. With a flickering arc, it hit Loki hard in the chest. Moment. Loki was knocked into the air, and immediately, as if he had been electrocuted, he twitched on the ground, and from time to time, a terrifying electric current flashed across his body, and the arc flickered. The sudden attack halved Loki's combat strength, and the divine costume on his body was also slowly disappearing. Lying on the ground, rolling his eyes, and twitching from time to time. Don't you hurry up. Su Zaichang looked around at the lively crowd, and let out a helpless roar. It's okay to watch the excitement, but it's stupid to watch the excitement desperately. The surrounding crowd immediately realized, oh my god, this is a fight between gods, screamed, and all fled the scene within a few seconds, running to nothing. Only Steve Rogers, who had just stood up, was left clutching his chest with pain on his face. It was really painful from being hit by Loki just now. Seeing this, Natasha Romanoff, who was in the air, immediately prepared to land the fighter plane to receive Loki, the prisoner. Yet at the moment, the screen in front of her suddenly flickered, and finally directly indicated that the control right was taken away. Immediately afterwards, a familiar voice came from her. Hey, Agent Romanov, how are you? Natasha Romanoff breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Su Zaichang below, and suddenly felt a sense of playfulness. Mr. Stark, I'm afraid you are late. Tony, who didn't know what was going on, smiled. I don't think I will be late. It is as impossible for the chief soldier to deal with that elk kid, just as it is impossible for me to eat the apple pie made by the grandma next door. Boom. Dragging 2 extremely long tails, with a bang, Iron Man Tony Stark among the red Baishong appeared on the stage. Soldiers. It landed on the ground with a bang. The guns in the palm of the hand were condensed, and all kinds of weapons such as small missiles and small machine guns on the arms were ready and aimed at Su Zaichang. Su Zaichang turned around and frowned at Tony. Uh-oh. Tony coughed dryly, and immediately retracted the weapon in embarrassment, looked at Loki, who was sprawled on the ground and twitched from time to time, and the corner of his mouth twitched. I seem to be really late. Yes, you are really late, Mr. Stark. At this time, Natasha Romanoff, who was controlling the landing of the fighter plane, added. Shit. You don't need to repeat this, Agent Romanov. Tony rolled his eyes and looked at Su Zaicheng in front of him, looking like he hadn't seen his good brother for a long time. If it was said earlier on that Mr. Hunter was there, I wouldn't use it. Do you people look down on Mr. Hunter's ability? Tony was really blowing. Su Zaicheng rolled his eyes again and again. Does this guy have some conspiracy waiting for him? Mr. Stark, Mr. Su was only invited by us, not an Avenger. Natasha Romanoff, who got off the plane, reminded. Hired. She dared not say that. Or it would be better to invite them over. Oh, I got it. Tony nodded suddenly, and asked Loki, who was lying on the ground secretly. What about this guy? Take the fighter plane. Steve Rogers said. We need to bring him back to the command center. Okay. Tony nodded, looking very emotional. It seems that your head hasn't rusted after being frozen for so long. Being stunned suddenly, Steve glanced helplessly at Tony, but finally said nothing. Tony was his old friend's heir, after all. Su Zaicheng didn't get involved. After Avengers, the two leading figures are now starting to fight. This is something that can't be helped. As for Natasha Romanoff, it's the same. Anyway, she has lived for many years. She has been an agent in S.H.I.E.L.D. It is estimated that she is older than Su Zaicheng. She naturally knows some secrets that ordinary people do not know. She also knows the problems between Tony and Steve Rogers, so she did not force her to persuade her. They can do whatever they like, as long as they don't fight. Su Zaicheng picked up Loki, who was still twitching on the ground, threw him on the fighter plane, and tightly handcuffed it around the fighter plane with special handcuffs and neck cuffs. These are all specially made and used to deal with extraordinary people. If it is not a fighting god like Thor but Loki, it will be really difficult to escape. Tony and Steve Rogers got on the fighter plane one after another, while Natasha Romanoff started driving. The fighter plane takes off. After a moment of relief, Loki has gradually recovered, but he didn't say anything, just looked at the three people in front of him jokingly. Su Zaicheng definitely knew why Loki was joking, but he didn't care. Mr. Hunter. Suddenly, Tony seemed to remember something, and looked at Su Zaicheng with resentful eyes. What's up? It gave Su Zaicheng a chill. Goosebumps popped up, and the whole body trembled. Where did you get your new energy source? Tony looked complicated. I'm messing around. Su Zaicheng now understood what Tony was going to say. It should be that S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him his father's belongings some time ago, right? I thought it was something super good, or another new energy source. As a result, I immediately found that it was exactly the same as the new energy Genichi given by Su Zaicheng. Tony was stunned for a moment. For a moment, I couldn't figure out whether this new energy source was created, found by Howard, or by Su Zaicheng. Did I get tricked by Su Zaicheng? Su Zaicheng read Tony's current thoughts in his heart, and sighed in his heart. Yes, it's just cheating you. Mr. Hunter, you should know that the new energy you took out is the same as the relic left by my father? Tony asked. Do not know. Su Zaicheng shook his head. This kind of thing can never be admitted. Tony gave Su Zaicheng a complicated look. If he doesn't know, he really doesn't believe it, at least he trusts his father more. Although he knew that Mr. Hunter was not a good person, it was still a bit uncomfortable to be tricked so quietly. But forget it. Anyway, he can't afford to offend the bounty hunter in front of him for the time being. If you are cheated, you will be cheated, and it is only 100 million meters. Now if you make him anxious, if you receive a mission to hunt and kill yourself next time, wouldn't you just do it right away? It's not bad that Tony is arrogant, but he has also seen Su Zaicheng show off his power, and that kind of strength is absolutely beyond his current reach. He will not complain about himself and degenerate from then on. After all, it's just that he can't reach it at the moment. Tony is a genius. How long did it take him to research the Mark War armor? I believe he will reach that level of strength soon. Definitely, apart from that, he will not still maintain that arrogance that is not afraid of anything. Sometimes, people need to know how to adapt. Su Zaicheng's mind-reading ability was still on, once again reading all of Tony's thoughts into his mind. Nodded appreciatively. Smart man, worthy of Tony Stark. That's it. There was silence on the fighter plane. Boom. However, the good times didn't last long. When the fighter plane passed a dark cloud quietly appeared there. Boom. Thunder and lightning roared. In the face of such a terrifying force of nature, the fighter plane seems so inferior. What's the situation? Why is there thunder and lightning? Natasha Romanoff, who was driving the fighter plane, frowned slightly. As a fighter pilot, she knew clearly that there was no sign of thunder ahead. Lightning out of thin air. Loki, who had been silent all this time, was suddenly shocked, his eyes showing horror. What? Are you afraid of thunder? Asked Steve Rogers from the sidelines. Do not. A mocking smile curled up on Loki's mouth. I'm the one who's afraid of thunder. A burst of extremely fast roar sounded. Boom. Pong. When everyone just reacted, the whole fighter plane shook violently, and everyone present felt that a person was stepped on the top of the fighter plane. Tony decisively picked up the mask on the side, and then opened the cabin. Ben was going to fly up immediately to see who it was, only to find that the man landed directly on the tail of the cabin. The person with blonde hair flutters, wears armor and a red cloak, holds Mjolnir in his hand, and can summon thunder and lightning. Who is it not Thor? Natasha Romanoff, who had been keeping an eye on the rear, suddenly thought something was wrong. Natasha Romanoff also knows what happened in S.H.I.E.L.D. some time ago, including this proud Thor. At present, Thor has not experienced the emotions that truly belong to human beings. He still does his own way, even if he knows how to sacrifice for others. His arrogance is still unattainable by ordinary people. This kind of personality meets Tony, who is equally arrogant. If there is no running in period, oh no, even if there is a running in period, some sparks are bound to be sparked. The moment Tony saw Thor, the palm cannon in his hand was already condensed, trying to block him. And Thor is also a person who doesn't talk too much. He doesn't say a word of nonsense. Picking up the hammer is like giving Tony a blow. Su Zaicheng on the side moved. He dodged between the two of them, grabbed Mjolnir with his left hand, and directly wiped out Tony's palm cannon with his right hand. His whole body shook slightly, looking left and right. Be more harmonious, can't you sit down and talk? Su Zaicheng said earnestly. He's getting old all of a sudden? This is definitely impossible. It is impossible to be a good person in this life. Other things are just clouds. Only money is the most fragrant. So why the sudden move? In fact, the reason is very simple, nothing more than not wanting them to fight. Because if Thor's hammer is solid, then the final result will be that neither of them will accept it, and it will eventually turn into a fight. After all, Tony is not a vegetarian. He will endure everything. How long are these two guys going to fight? A Thor, an Iron Man, neither of them weak, fighting endless rhythm, delaying the plane time, delaying the speed of transporting Loki. Wouldn't it be nice to sit down and have a good talk? Firstly, it won't delay the plane time, and secondly, it won't hurt the flowers and plants. What a wonderful thing. Why can't these two guys figure it out? He is still in a hurry to go back to collect the stock commission. After receiving the commission, he will go home to accompany Jiali. Who the hell is free to spend time with you here? It's you. Thor now remembered Su Zaicheng. It's hard not to remember. That period was the most difficult time in his life. He kept it in his heart to alert himself all the time, among which Su Zaicheng and Jiali appeared in his memory is still fresh in his memory. It's really shameful for a dignified Thor to be turned around to vomit. At the same time, I was slightly surprised in my heart. Although he didn't use all his strength for the hammer just now, seeing how Su Zaicheng received the hammer with ease, it was obvious that he didn't use all his strength. Did not expect. I thought Jiali was the coolest, but I didn't expect that the guy next to Jiali in a hooded trench coat was so badass. This guy just showed up all of a sudden. Tony noticed that the palm cannon hit Su Zaicheng's palm, but he didn't hurt him at all. His pupils shrank slightly, and he said, I'm afraid they came to snatch Loki. Whether it is snatched or killed, the Tesseract will be gone. Can't let him take it away. You don't deserve the Tesseract, and you don't deserve to judge Loki. Thor withdrew his mind, and the two confronted Su Zaicheng's left and right hands like this. Mind your own business, Tin Woodman. Loki will definitely be judged by Asgard. As long as you hand over the Rubik's Cube, you can do whatever you want, but before that. Tony chuckled, it's best not to get in the way. Thor got a little angry, and slowly lowered his head. Thor's power was gathering. Stark. We don't have a battle plan yet. Steve Rogers picked up the shield and wanted to get involved, but found that it seemed difficult for him to get involved in this kind of fairy fight. The battle plan is. Tony's left hand was held by Su Zaicheng, and his right hand slowly condensed the palm cannon, ready to fire at any time. Fight. All of a sudden, the atmosphere became extremely tense. Loki sat on the side, watching this scene with interest. It's like watching a play. Thor, he suddenly said, Odin sent you to the earth, didn't it cost a lot of dark energy? Shut up. Thor shouted suddenly. I will teach you a lesson later. Oh, it wasn't you who taught him the lesson. Tony suddenly shook his head funny, it's me. Damn mortals. Thor cursed secretly, his pupils gradually ignited with lightning. Shut up all of them. Suddenly, an indifferent voice came. Tony only felt that the armor on his left hand was suddenly enveloped by a powerful force. The extremely hard material was directly pinched and twisted, and pressed against its internal parts. Faint electric light flickered on it. He had no doubts at all, as long as he used with a little effort, his left hand would be disabled. Thor is not much worse. He wanted to pull Mjolnir out, but found that if he didn't use Thor's power, it would be like a small human being trying to move a mountain, and he would not move. These two situations made them calm down instantly. Is this farce over? Su Zicheng let go of his hand slowly, and the control of Mjolnir in his left hand immediately returned, interestingly to Thor and Tony's hands. The two didn't intend to fight this time, they just glared at each other angrily. Su Zicheng nodded in satisfaction, walked to the side of the cabin, and closed the cabin door. Looking at the two people in front of him, he spread his hands together. Isn't this all right? Is there anything we can't sit down and talk about? Thor and Tony sat on both sides. Although they still didn't see each other very well and were wary of each other, they still didn't fight. In this regard, Steve Rogers can only give Su Zicheng a thumbs up. Although he doesn't like the hunter in front of him, he has to say that strength is sometimes more useful than reason, and strength plus reason is simply the rhythm of overthrowing everything. Natasha Romanoff, who had been flying the fighter plane, also heaved a sigh of relief, panting heavily, her chest rising and falling. Natasha Romanoff is really nervous. To say who is most afraid of the two fighting, it is her as the fighter pilot. It would be fine for these two horrible guys to fight outside, but if they really fight inside the fighter plane, the unlucky ones will be the fighter pilot and Captain America Steve Rogers. Which of them is not powerful? It is estimated that the aftermath of the fight can penetrate the fighter plane. Falling apart is the best result. Although she, Natasha Romanoff, has lived for 100 years, and her fighting ability is also one of the best. She is a level 10 agent boss of S.H.I.E.L.D., but she has not yet had the physique to survive a fall from a height of tens of thousands of meters. She is neither Tony nor Thor nor Hulk. If it falls apart, Captain America will die suddenly on the spot. Even if there is a shield, the impact of falling from a height of tens of thousands of meters is enough to smash every part of his body into pieces. Probably like being shot by a mosquito, it's the same as snapping into pieces of meat. Fortunately, there is Su Zicheng. Su Zicheng suppressed these two guys who were ready to move. They had no choice but to have a serious discussion. Only after such a discussion do we know. Their goals are almost the same, but the process is somewhat different, and they can cooperate completely. Although Thor is very disdainful of cooperation. But the fact is that this guy needs cooperation very much. Except for the two only good friends on Earth, Jane and Dr. Hilwig, Thor is completely unaccompanied and has no brothers. As for Loki, now he is an enemy, maybe he will be stabbed in the back, it doesn't count for the time being. Summer. So, talk again. Plus the mediation of the good guy Steve Rogers. Although the two are still very at odds, but in the end, he temporarily suppressed the impulse to fight in his heart. Su Zicheng glanced at the three sitting quietly in front of him with satisfaction. I find it odd. After mediating between Thor and Tony, Steve Rogers said quietly, leaving Loki aside. What's weird? Thor glances at Captain America. Loki is strong. Steve Rogers said, I don't think he will be caught by us so easily. Loki's strength is stronger than you mortals, but with this bounty hunter around, I'm afraid it won't be particularly difficult to take him down. Thor's IQ can only be said to be not low, but it is definitely not high, and he has not seen the scene when Su Zicheng captured Loki, so he was a little confused for a while. No, that's not what I meant. Steve Rogers shook his head and said, he didn't have the slightest intention of running away, and he didn't use all his strength, as if he was caught by us on purpose. It was the same in Stuttgart, and he appeared swaggeringly eccentric. Tony glanced at Steve Rogers in surprise. As an elderly person, your IQ is very good. How do you maintain it? Much better than this big guy. Thor glanced at Tony, resisting the desire to blow his head off with the hammer. He was getting used to Tony's sharp tongue. Steve Rogers and Tony looked at each other, obviously very helpless with his venomous tongue, but as Wei Guangzheng's protagonist, he didn't want to argue with Tony. Then what can we do now? Thor asked. Just as Steve Rogers was about to speak, he was interrupted by Tony. What else can I do? The man has already been caught, so could it be that he was released because of these things? It's true that the big man has no wisdom. Shit. Thor cursed secretly, the veins on his forehead popped up, obviously enduring the pain. Su Zicheng looked at Thor with pity. It seems that it is still necessary to let the two of them fight to make both parties happy. You two should fight after you get Loki back. He walked up to the two of them, patted their shoulders at the same time, and said, "As long as I don't delay my delivery of Loki to the command center, it will be fine." As for what they just discussed, Su Zaicheng didn't bother to get involved. Of course he knew Loki was doing it on purpose. And after watching the plot, he also knows that Loki will be rescued soon. Nick Fury's 3 billion would be wasted, but what does that matter? He couldn't be bothered to stop Loki. You know, the task Nick Fury gave him was to catch Loki, and now he has done it, other things have nothing to do with him. Moreover, Su Zaicheng's little abacus is crackling. He can actually solve Loki at once. He knows where Hawkeye is. As long as he gets rid of these two people, and then uses paper cranes to find Dr. Hillwig, he can find where Tesseract is, and bring Tesseract over in minutes. Okay. But he wouldn't do that. He is not a fool. With the money to make steamed buns, but why go to help others build a house? What a joke. Now if it is solved once and for all, wouldn't it mean that 3 billion will be enough to settle the battle of the aircraft carrier and the battle with the Chitauri invasion? Wouldn't Su Zaicheng be at a loss? Just let the story develop naturally. If nothing else, just Chitauri's invasion, if you want him to solve it, at least start with tens of billions, right? He could have unearthed tens of billions of money in this war, so how could he settle everything after that for 3 billions? It's time to eat. As for the life and death of those who died because of this war, it has nothing to do with him. Su Zaicheng didn't want to save the world. Besides, this is what is going to happen. Su Zaicheng is just using his foresight of the plot to make some money. As long as the money is spent, fewer people will die. Why not do it? Everyone has selfishness. Su Zaicheng's selfishness is money. He has set his position from the very beginning. No distinction between good and evil. As long as the money does not touch his bottom line, then he can go all out for money. So I buried these thoughts deeply and didn't show them at all. Let them Avengers guess for themselves. Loki runs away if he wants to. Anyway, the bigger the trouble, the more money he gets from it, the stronger his strength, the stronger the strength, the more money, the stronger his strength. Across the German border, all the way without words, officially transported Loki back to the cloaked flight aircraft carrier. It took 4 hours, and the time of the United States after arriving at the place was probably not long after nightfall. 30,000 meters high, Loki is locked in a glass enclosure. Nick Fury stood not far in front of Loki. Tell me about your current situation. He walked over to a console and pressed a few buttons. If you want to escape, just scratch the glass. After the voice fell, a big opening was opened under and around the glass cover, and one could not see the ground at all, only the vast sea of clouds in the dim sky. The air currents in the high altitude surged, blowing so loudly. Loki walked to the edge and looked down gently, looking a little cautious. Well, where did I just say that? Nick Fury spread his hands, and in the air turbulent space, his voice was very melodious. By the way, if you want to escape, even if you just scratch the glass, you will take this iron cage, from the height of 30,000 meters free fall, you know everything? After speaking, he closed the window below, pointing to Loki, and then pointing to the console. Your shoes. I have to say, Nick Fury can be quite vengeful sometimes. This thing is well designed. Loki opened his hands, took a few steps back, and stood in the middle of the glass cover, without any feeling of being confined, and smiled. Isn't it for me? The thing that was supposed to be closed is much more dangerous than you. Nick Fury has nothing to hide. Because as long as a smart person can guess it, this thing is used to shut down Hulk. I heard about it. Loki looked at the camera on the side, and said in a melodious tone, it's a berserk beast, and he pretends to be an ordinary person. How desperate are you to find this kind of monster to protect you? Bruce Banner was staring at the monitor, a little uncomfortable after hearing this. Natasha Romanoff looked up at him, a little afraid that he would transform accidentally. The screen turns back. How desperate am I? You threatened us with war, and you stole something beyond your control. In fact, in your heart, killing is your greatest pleasure. Nick Fury walked over slowly. I tell you, you did make me very desperate, but I will make you regret it. Have bounty hunters made me regret it? Loki spread his hands and stared at Nick Fury. You can't control him, can you? This feeling makes you flustered, doesn't it? Oh yes, and the Rubik's Cube. The feeling of falling short makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it? Just a little bit. Just a little bit. You can get the energy of the Rubik's Cube. As he said that, Loki had a sarcastic smile on his face. Endless energy. What is your purpose? Let all human beings enjoy warmth. Now you have seen its true capabilities. Nick Fury looked at Loki quietly, and suddenly smiled. Your so-called real power is just wanting to be on the cover of a magazine. After speaking, he left. After leaving, Nick Fury couldn't help but drip cold sweat on his forehead. Loki, the god of trickery, as expected of you. Nick Fury exhaled. Confronting Loki made the king of agents feel guilty. Every point stuck firmly in his heart, whether it was Mr. Sue, the bounty hunter, or Tesseract. Nick Fury just walked a few steps. He found that the shadow in front of him seemed to have changed. His expression changed slightly. Mr. Sue, why don't you come out and meet? Su Zaichang slowly emerged from Nick Fury's shadow. His voice was emotionless. The task has been completed, 3 billion, and it will be credited into my account by tomorrow evening. After speaking, he dived into the shadow next to him again and disappeared without a trace. Looking at his own shadow, Nick Fury felt that this Mr. Sue was much stronger than the last time he saw him. With a wry smile, Nick Fury had a headache. Should I change my thinking? Don't think about controlling and controlling all day long? Shaking his head and putting his hands behind his back, Nick Fury left the spot. As for Su Zaichang, he left the aircraft carrier. Natasha Romanoff was not notified to send him down. After all, it was hard to come to an altitude of 30,000 meters. He also wanted to try the feeling of floating down from such a high altitude. Moreover, you had to show off your muscles more or less. Su Zaichang shot an arrow towards the ground with normal strength, and then he stepped on the arrow and flew down slowly. Others fly with the sword, I fly with the arrow. Maybe some details are different, but in general, just as handsome. But let's be honest, 30,000 meters is really a bit high. Calculating it is a full 30 kilometers in height. If you don't drive Hawkeye, even with Su Zaichang's current eyesight, it will be difficult to see to the end at a glance. And the crotch is chilly. If you accidentally slipped your feet at such a high altitude, wouldn't you be killed on the spot? But fortunately, Su Zaichang was very stable all the way, flying all the way from the sea to Manhattan, New York before stopping. It took about half an hour to fly. It was an addiction, even more exciting than bungee jumping. Whoosh, an arrow shot out through the air. It hit a big boulder on the outskirts of Manhattan hard, and with a bang, the boulder was directly blown into pieces, and the arrow pierced into the ground. Su Zaichang jumped from the arrow before hitting the stone. One word, handsome. After feeling emotional for a while, Su Zaichang used Hawkeye to confirm his position, and then rushed to the villa with his fastest speed. Carrie was still waiting for him at home. It took a day and a night to go out this time. What if little Jiali is hungry? Although he knew that Jiali was hungry all the time, it was still a little difficult for Su Zaichang to change his mind, and it was inevitable to think so. And Gali, who was staying at home, seemed to have sensed something, and had been waiting at the gate of the villa early on. The first time Su Zaichang came home, he saw Li wearing a little dinosaur pajamas and poking her head inside the gate. A smile could not help but the corners of Su Zaichang's mouth slowly slowed down. It's the same length as normal home, come back. Alas. Jiali rolled her eyes, opened the door with her short legs, and hung on Su Zaichang like a koala. Su Zaichang was the first person who treated her well after coming to Earth, so she has a strong sense of dependence on Su Zaichang. In this regard, Su Zaichang can only let her hang on. Anyway, Jiali is not heavy, but very light. Are you hungry today? No. Want to eat something delicious? Think. Then I'm going to order something delicious now, Chinese food or Western food. Authentic Chinese food. No problem. %ZSG carrot. Authentic Chinese food, as long as it is not the dishes like Buddha jumping over the wall and boiled cabbage, is basically not particularly particular about exquisiteness, and the portion is large and filling. 90. Eatable steaks have to be cut into 3 or more with a knife and fork. Take your time. Ordinary people like Su Zaichang only think that if this food is delicious, I will eat more, and then give a small amount of money afterwards, which is the best compliment to the chef, and other things are all bells and whistles. Does verbal praise and tasting have real money? But it is really hard to find authentic Western food. After all, the local restaurants in the United States with Chinese food brands have basically undergone magical changes and cannot be regarded as Chinese food. Especially in terms of sugar, what Lao Mi eats is so sweet that it bursts. If you don't eat sugar often in China, you will definitely not get used to the food here after you come to the United States. But, very precisely, Su Zaichang knows an authentic Chinese restaurant. The former Su Zaichang often went there to eat, although the place is not big, but there are a lot of customers, most of them are Asians, so there are also a lot of ingredients. Su Zicheng called directly to order all the dishes for tonight, and directly placed a deposit for delivery. The dishes in Chinese restaurants are prepared very quickly, because the cooking pots in the back kitchen are basically large pots. It is not a problem to fry several bowls at the same time while maintaining the taste, and there are many chefs. Under the whole restaurant's whole horse processing, it can be done in 1.5 hours. Ship things over. Su Zicheng also ate a lot tonight. After all, he hadn't eaten for 2 days after all. Definitely, most of it is still eaten by Jiali, and giving Su Zicheng 10, hundreds, or even hundreds of billions of trillions of stomachs will not be as good as Jiali. After dinner, Jiali insisted on dragging Su Zicheng to sleep with her. In the end, we had no choice but to sleep together. But what I have to say is that Jiali's human-shaped pillow is still very comfortable to hold. It is so small, soft as if it has no bones. Definitely, anyone who really thinks that she is soft and boneless would be very wrong. Su Zicheng knows how much energy is hidden under this appearance. Nothing to say all night. The next morning, it was just dawn. Su Zicheng's mobile phone sent a message that the amount had arrived. 3 billion, not a word missing. After receiving the account, Su Zicheng immediately regained his energy. He gently put Jiali lying on his chest aside, sat up, and turned on the system. Sure enough, there are 3,004,800,000 in the system balance. It's comfortable. There was a smile on the corner of Su Zicheng's mouth, looking a little excited. 3 billion. How much can you buy? Su Zicheng walked to the bathroom while thinking, picked up the toothbrush and toothcup and began to brush his teeth. However, put the shopping aside first, and take a look at your skills before talking. King Kong Immortal Body IV.4, Absolute Hit vs. .3, Hawkeye vs. .3, Mind Control LV.3, Shadow Stealth IV.3, Mind Reading, Danger Perception, Self-Healing, a total of 8 skills. Among them, Mind Reading, Danger Perception, and Self-Healing cannot be upgraded. There is also Shadow Concealment, which has reached the highest level, so naturally it cannot continue to upgrade. The ones that can be upgraded are Indestructible Body, Absolute Hit, Hawkeye, and Mind Control. Absolute Hit is enough for now. The same is true for Hawkeye. After all, the current battles are still on the Earth. It is useless for Hawkeye to see through the universe at a glance. Mind Control. This skill is actually good. Su Zicheng really wants to upgrade it. But compared to the indestructible body of King Kong, Su Zicheng held up the toothbrush. His mouth was full of froth of toothpaste. He hesitated a little. Finally, after much deliberation, still decided to upgrade the indestructible body of Vajra. Making up his mind, Su Zicheng continued to brush his teeth. This King Kong indestructible body is somewhat similar to the Man of Steel before LV.3 and LV.3, but after that, it is different. The resistance of the Man of Steel to magic is almost zero, and the King Kong indestructible body IV after 4, resist magic damage equal to physical damage. From this point of view, although the indestructible body of King Kong is a bit low in name, its stretching effect seems to be much stronger than that of the steel body. Whether it's the fight with Natasha Romanoff, or the Abomination, or the clash between Thor and Tony on the plane yesterday. All use this skill. The usefulness of this thing is self-evident. Anyway, Su Zicheng is cowardly. The defense points are full, and I will hammer you while standing, but you will not be able to hammer it, and you will be exhausted if you are tired. 12 Moz. Vajra Indestructible Body, LV.4, required for upgrade. 1 billion. It's just doubled, and it's still within an acceptable range. After all, upgrading from IV.3 to IV.4 is a direct increase from 10 million to 500 million. After such a leap, I am afraid that everything is acceptable in his eyes. Without any hesitation, just click Upgrade. 1 billion is deducted from the account funds. The upgrade is complete. Su Zicheng feels that his physique has once again improved dramatically in Xuanshenhu. At present, his physique is 100, which is 100 times that of ordinary people. In IV.4, his indestructible body is enough for him to block the damage of guys with physique 3 or 400. Now after upgrading to IV.5, Su Zicheng is completely worthwhile even against people with a physique of 500 or even 600. Although his 100 strength may not be able to hurt such a boss with a physique of 500 or 600, he wants to defeat Su Zicheng. The defense is even more difficult. Even if he breaks Su Zicheng's arm with all his strength, the self-healing ability will restore him to his original state within seconds. Comfortable. With a smile on the corner of Su Zicheng's mouth, he spit out the toothpaste foam, rinsed his mouth, and walked out of the bathroom. It only cost 1 billion, and there are still 2 billion left to spend. In fact, it is 2.1 billion to be precise. After all, he still has a 10% discount for C-level hunters. If you spend 1 billion, the discount will be 900 million. Another 2.1 billion. Su Zaicheng thought about it. As a C-level hunter, I don't even know when I can upgrade, and there are only 10 skill bars. 8 of the 10 skill columns were occupied. There are only 2 skill bars left. In other words, no matter how many billions he has, he can only buy 2 skills. It's just outrageous. Money can't be spent. But there is no way. The sudden restriction is directly proportional to the discount, and this discount is still very fragrant. When he came to the kitchen, he opened the bread bag and took out 2 slices of bread, spread jam on it and took a bite. Is there a skill that is equivalent to having many other skills after buying it? This thing is very representative of the Sharingan in Naruto, which should be one of the skills that most people know. Sharingan LV.1 priced at 100,000. Copy eyes, can copy the opponent's ninjutsu in battle. Insight eyes, can see clearly the context, see through all the subtle movements of the opponent. Hypnotic ability eyes, use illusion to control the opponent. V.3 evolved into a kaleidoscope. In the introduction of sharing eyes, there is the item of copying eyes. Kakashi copies thousands of ninjutsu, and is called Copy Ninja because of his sharing eyes. So, getting Sharingan, does it mean that you have acquired many small skills? This is definitely impossible. Sharingan may not be very useful in the Marvel world. Like Thor, Iron Man Tony, Captain America Steve Rogers. These people either rely on hammers or iron sheets or directly rely on their own physical strength and superb fighting technique. What can be copied? To go a little further. As far as the Jiali in front of me is concerned, she has countless skills, but can Sharingan copy them? In the early stage of Naruto, Sharingan's copy ability might be very powerful, which made Kakashi the title of Copy Ninja, which made countless people frightened. It didn't show up either. Kakashi also said that Sharingan can only copy ninjutsu of a level and below. No matter how high it is absolutely impossible, and even some A-level ninjutsu are difficult to copy. In Naruto, which one can barely see past in the Marvel world, is not a Super S-level forbidden technique, and A-level ninjutsu, let alone Marvel, is still useful in the later stage of Naruto. In addition to shadow duplication and spiral pill, there is another hammer. Other things are not enough to see. Even the current elementary level Tony may not be able to beat, let alone after. Therefore, this option was directly given a direct pass by Su Zaicheng. Although Sharingan is handsome, ability is really not strong. Unless you directly use Sharingan, you can barely see it in the early stage. But there are better options. Why choose reincarnation? Is Su Zaicheng out of his mind? Shaking his head, he dismissed the idea of buying Sharingan. Su Zaicheng continued to check the system mall. Hard work pays off. I really found a good thing for him, which is also a pupil technique, but it is much stronger than Sharingan. Copying Eye, LV.1. The price is 1 million. After activation, it can instantly analyze the composition, form, nature, and power of the magic seen in the eyes, and can directly learn its magic. Even if the opponent's magic stops halfway effective, the higher the level, the stronger the magic that can be copied directly. The abilities Su Zaicheng of this eye has seen it before. The eyes of the protagonist in the anime, Legend of the Brave, are somewhat similar to Sharingan. When activated, a red pentagram appears in the eyes. Because of intense emotions, anger, fear, sadness, etc., are witnessing the killing of someone they valued, they will start to go berserk after being seriously stimulated, destroying everything around them regardless of whether they are friends or foes, and they will not stop until they die. Moreover, the holder of the copy eye usually cannot return to normal after the rampage, but when he is still in the initial stage of roaring or laughing rampage, he can be knocked unconscious by others to stop the rampage state. Although there are flaws, the power of this eye ability cannot be denied. After activation, you can instantly analyze the composition, form, nature, and power of the magic you see in your eyes, and you can directly learn its magic. It will still be effective even if the opponent's magic stops in the middle of activation. Skilled copy eye holders can do it first, and if they have extensive knowledge, they can even change the existing magic at will and create new magic that reaches the practical level. What is magic? An essential part of the Marvel system. Like Doctor Strange, Ancient One, Scarlet Witch. Everyone uses magic, even the Nordic king of god Odin and the villain Dormammu in the Marvel world also use magic, oh yes, and the one who was arrested, Loki. Although most of these magicians, except for Loki, tend to be melee magicians, especially Kamar Taj, represented by Ancient One, almost uses whips and shields except for the space gate, but they also use magic power. According to the description of the copying eye, the stronger the level, the stronger the magic can be copied. Does that mean that when the copy eyes reach a certain level, when faces Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, he can analyze the composition, form, nature, and power of the magic she uses in minutes, and then directly learn her magic, use her magic against her? Like the magic whip, and the small bug-level space gate, isn't that just copying? Although it is really necessary to reach that level, the level and money required must be terrifying. But at least its ceiling is there. Comparing Sharingan with it, it is simply not at the same level. The only thing to care about is its sequelae. Once the mood fluctuates, it will fall into a situation of unconscious killing. Su Zaicheng frowned slightly. If he was not afraid in the normal world, would he be tired of living like this in the Marvel world? System, can you help eliminate the weakness of copy eyes? After purchasing, you can spend money to eliminate weaknesses, and the host doesn't have to worry about it. Slightly relieved. Although Su Zaicheng is very confident in controlling his emotions, who knows when something unacceptable will happen to him? If he is confronted with an extremely big guy and he still goes berserk, wouldn't it be an egg hitting a rock? Fortunately, weaknesses can be eliminated. This relieved Su Zaicheng a lot. In fact, there are pupil techniques that are similar to or even stronger than copying eyes, such as Jianjigu's eye, no matter what it is, whether it is written text, the use of weapons, or various strange martial arts, or even physique, like those of other races' inherited ability. Almost everything in the world, as long as you have seen it with your own eyes, you can fully understand it and use it proficiently. And the owner has the physique of healing instantly without receiving fatal damage, and immune to non-fatal poison. Ninjutsu, illusion, body jutsu, super ability, text, physique, using weapons, thinking, seeing content. You only need to read Jianjigu. You can fully understand it after reading it once, and you can understand it after reading it twice, and you can master and use it proficiently without any practice. If possible, Su Zaicheng also wants to buy this pupil technique. Because, even in the Marvel world where there are so many big bosses, this pupil technique is the top among the top ones. It is so terrifying that it can even copy Jiali's whole body's ability with 2 glances, and then become a multi-universe level boss. That's right, that's the bug, it's that scary. And there is no hierarchy, you will get the Eye of Jianjigu directly after purchasing. But, relatively speaking, the money needed to buy it is also very scary. Su Zaicheng's current level can't even be seen. According to his estimate, tens of billions, hundreds of billions, they are all small. The estimate of trillions is the most basic. With his current money-making ability, he can earn trillions. The ghost knows that the year of the monkey is over, it's really difficult. However, although it is not as good as Jian Jigu's eye, the copying eye is not weak. In the Marvel world, invisibility, energy projection, penetration, teleportation, space spanning, and terrifying mind magic ability covers the whole world, can communicate with more than 10 targets at the same time, read any human thoughts and implant memory. The scope of magic is still terrible, especially in the world of Marvel. Many settings are the ultimate bug, and then the manga editor directly goes to magic. It is very ruthless. For example, Kamar Taj's Space Gate, although there are different opinions, there are basically only 2 reliable ones. First, you can open the space gate to go to the places you have been to at any time. Second, as long as you think of places can lose. The former is not as good as the latter, but both are terrible abilities. There is no way. Eating books is the most basic super ability of Marvel painters. Deadpool can slaughter the Marvel universe. What else can't happen? Copying eye, LV.1. The price is 1 million. After activation, it can instantly analyze the composition, form, nature, and power of the magic seen in the eyes, and can directly learn its magic. Even if the opponent's magic stops halfway effective, the higher the level, the stronger the magic that can be copied directly. The selling price of the copy eye LV.1 is 1 million. Upgrading to IV.2 requires 100 million. LV.3 needs 1 billion. IV.4 needs 5 billion. Nima is an exaggeration. Upgrading to IV.3 requires 1.1 billion and 1 million. Things like the indestructible body of King Kong can only reach the threshold of 1 billion by upgrading to LV.5. Even absolute hits with extremely high gold content can also be upgraded to LV.4. 1 billion is needed. This upgrade to LV.3 will cost 1 billion. One can imagine how buggy this ability is. Even if you get a 10% discount, you need ***, which is 990.9 million. After such a purchase, wouldn't I only be left with asterisk asterisk, 1,001,009,100,000? Adding the original 4.8 million, there are at most 1,113.9 million left. 3 billion. Will this be the only thing left in the blink of an eye? Su Zaicheng gritted his teeth. Damn, buy it. Afraid of a hammer, isn't money earned for spending? Make up your mind directly, buy the copy eye, and directly upgrade to LV.3. In an instant, his account balance was only 1,113.9 million. Su Zaicheng only felt that his pupils were numb for a while, and couldn't help but close his eyes to relieve the feeling. This feeling comes and goes quickly. He opened his eyes quickly. If someone is by his side, he must be able to see the mysterious pattern in his eyes. The original black pupils have changed, and a red pentagram pattern appeared in the pupils, covered with magic lines, looking mysterious and mysterious. Su Zaicheng let out a breath of foul air slowly, and closed the copy eyes. After purchasing the copy eye, now it is necessary to get rid of its negative effects. Eye drops for removing the negative effects of copy eyes. The price is 113.9 million. Drop it into both eyes, and it can remove copy eyes. After receiving severe mental stimulation, it will go berserk, destroying everything around it regardless of whether it is the enemy or friend, until the sequelae of death just stopped. Su Zaicheng is really a black face with a question mark. Is the system just waiting for him here, so that he can get rid of his headhunting? Really F***ku. However, it doesn't work if you don't buy it. The negative effect of copying eyes is really exaggerated. In addition to the early stage, it can be cured. Once it really enters the berserk stage, it will become a killing machine, and it will be difficult to recover. Buy and you're done. After purchasing, Su Zaicheng had a small bottle of eye drops in his hand. According to the introduction, except for the first drop and the second drop, which can remove the sequelae of the left and right eyes respectively, the others are ordinary eye drops. Open the cap of the bottle, aim at the eyes and drop a drop to the left and right eyes. Su Zaicheng only felt that his eyes were very comfortable, and then it was gone. Repercussions removed. Shaking his head helplessly, Su Zaicheng looked at his own physique and clicked on it. 100 physical fitness. It is considered very high among ordinary people, and it is enough to keep up with the power of Little Spider-Man in the middle stage when it can beat the Little Spider-Man in the early stage. But as far as it is now, it is still a bit low. King Kong is not bad as an augmentation skill. The better the foundation, the stronger the boost will be. If there is only 1 point of constitution, King Kong is not bad. No matter how high it is, it can't stop the punch of a guy with a constitution of 50. The sentence that the body is the capital of everything is vividly expressed. Even if the amount needed for this physique point is too exaggerated. Before getting 50 physique, each physique point needs 1 million. Now that the physique is 100, the money needed for each physique point is 5 times that of 50, and it takes a full 5 million to buy 1 point. To be honest, it hurts. But there is no way, for the sake of strength, buy it, spend money, go for it. In order to show his determination, Su Zaicheng directly bought another 50 points, spending 250 million. His physique has reached a limit again, and if he buys up, he needs 10 million points. Su Zaicheng glanced at his balance, and there was 750 million left, so he spent another 250 million to buy 25 points. So far, his attributes are as follows. Host, Su Zaicheng. Physical fitness. 175 hunter level. C ability. King Kong's indestructible body LV.5. Replica eyes LV.3. Absolute hit LV.3. Hawkeye vs. .3. Mind control LV.3. Shadow concealment LV.3. Mind reading, danger perception self-healing. Equipment. Hunter suit, +10. Elemental bow, +10. White snake bow, +5. Tracking paper crane, 4. Mall balance. 500 million. There is 1 left in the skill column, and there are 500 million balance in the mall. This should be able to buy another skill, but Su Zaicheng is not going to buy any more, so I will save these for later use. The Marvel world is unpredictable. Who knows if all will develop according to the plot, or save some later for comparison. It is good. Not long after Su Zaicheng finished eating the bread, Carrie also got up. With her strength, she didn't notice Su Zaicheng's change. This is definitely not her perception problem. After all, she is a full-level boss with all 7. According to Su Zaicheng's analysis, it should be a small ant no matter what. Even if the small ant is a little bigger, it is still an ant, so I don't care at all. Sometimes the truth hurts like that. Gary, can you do magic? Watching Jiali eating bread, Su Zaicheng asked. Definitely, this is actually nonsense. The little Gali who is able to release almost unlimited forms of energy and omniscient and omnipotent definitely knows magic. As predicted. Jiali swallowed the bread, babbled, nodded and said, definitely will. Then show it to me later, okay. Su Zaicheng's eyes lit up. The first thing to do after having a copy eye is naturally to find Jiali to copy some magic for use, no matter how bad it is to condense a whip, open a space door or something. Sure. Nod your head and say yes. After breakfast, Su Zaicheng and Jiali came to the backyard of the villa. The backyard of the villa is not big, about 100 meters long, but it is enough to release some non-destructive magic. Copy eye. Open. Looking at Jiali in front of him, a magical 5-pointed star pattern appeared in Su Zaicheng's black eyes. Golly, let's start the demonstration. Okay. Jiali turned her head and forgot to glance at Su Zaicheng, and then saw the little girl snap her fingers. Everything around, including the breeze, the swaying grass, the rustling trees, and the birds flying in midair all stop at this moment. Only Jiali and Su Zaicheng are not affected on the whole earth. How about it? Jiali giggled and said, time stops, it's magic. Su Zaicheng opened his clone eyes, and the corners of his mouth twitched endlessly. Up as a time stop. The copy eye in the pupil spins rapidly, trying to analyze the composition, form and nature of the magic seen in the eyes countless times, but unfortunately in the end, there is almost no movement like a mud cow sinking into the sea, and only a little bit is learned, probably only able to stop the magic in the palm of one's hand. Time is of no use at all. How could it be possible for the copy eye that is only verses .3 to be able to analyze and directly let Su Zaicheng learn to successfully stop the magic of such a bug? Su Zaicheng calmed down the mood of wanting to complain. Start with ordinary magic, okay? Carrie pouted. Okay. Next, Jiali performed a series of basic magic skills such as fireball and water polo for Su Zaicheng, which looked very cool. It's a pity that it's not very powerful. It's okay to hit ordinary people. You don't need to resist hard to deal with slightly stronger ones, and you can easily dodge them. It's not as good as the elemental arrows condensed by the elemental bow. However, this kind of small fireball and small water polo are very playable. Su Zaicheng is like a child who just got a toy, learning this kind of little magic with great enjoyment. Definitely, besides that. One type of magic that Su Zaicheng cares most about right now. Li, do you know flight magic? Su Zaicheng looked at Jiali with burning eyes. Although he can also ride high in the sky now, it is very troublesome and not compelling. How can it be as convenient as flight? Flight. That is the ultimate dream of human beings. Unlike Flight who is on an airplane, he wants to use his ability to soar in the sky. Magic is also true and ruthless. People have fire-type abilities, water-type abilities, and flight abilities. As a result, magic can all be done by magic. Definitely will. Jiali nodded without any hesitation, and flew up out of thin air. This time, instead of relying on her own super ability, she uses magic to fly, which is somewhat similar to wind magic, but not all. Flight magic is not a particularly esoteric magic, and the copy eye that reaches IV.3 is just enough to copy. The copying eyes flickered slightly, and the composition, form and nature of flight magic were analyzed within a few seconds. Waves of magical knowledge came into his mind, and a gust of wind rose out of thin air, and Su Zaicheng was directly dragged into the air. With an expression of excitement on his face, the corners of Su Zaicheng's mouth could not stop rising, flying back and forth in midair. The ability of copying eyes in copying magic can still be compared with that of Jianjigu, copying with one eye, mastering it with 2 eyes. As for the third eye, proficient copy eye holders can do it first, and if they have extensive knowledge, they can even change existing magic at will and create new magic that reaches the practical level. Su Zaicheng's mind was moved, and he even used the fire magic that he had just learned to condense a handsome and cool wing behind him. When he gently fanned it, some sparks would splash down, exuding a fiery breath. Just like the burning bird. Although it is based on the same principle as the flight magic, the help of the fire wings to the flight is infinitely close to zero, but it can't stand it, and it is very powerful. Well, that's right, it's just pure bluffing. Su Zaicheng happily replicated all kinds of little magic on Jiali. What kind of wind magic? Wind slash. Ice magic, frozen thousands of miles. Fire magic, meteorite flames. For spells like frozen 1,000 miles and meteor flame, the single target damage may not be as good as the elemental arrows condensed by the elemental bow in Su Zaicheng's hand, but when it comes to group damage, Su Zaicheng with only one bow is incomparable got 2 group attack magic method. After all, a bow can only shoot so many elemental arrows at most, and it can only be fired once at a time. Although there is no forward swing, the group damage is definitely not comparable to these large magics. The ability of the copy eye is still very powerful. At least he is really good at copying magic. Although it's only LV.3, you can easily learn the magic of the general city destroying level, so it's not too cool. You can learn so many skills by spending the skill bar of one skill. In IV.4 and IV.5, you may be able to directly copy Gali's time at a glance. It can only be said that this deal is very cost-effective. The copy magic that Su Zaicheng is working on. On the other hand, the Avengers are also actively looking for Tesseract. Natasha Romanoff went to communicate with Loki in an attempt to deceive some information and make Luigi's plan fail. The final result was Natasha Romanoff's success. However, behind this result, they didn't think carefully. Who is Loki? The god of tricks, maybe not as good as a fighter like Thor in terms of physical fitness, but he is a god in the true sense in terms of playing tricks. How could it be possible? Was it easy to get the news from Natasha Romanoff, a mere mortal? In the small research room of the aviation base, the original Avengers come together. Iron Man Tony Stark, Thor, Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, Green Titan Hulk Bruce Banner, Captain America Steve Rogers and Black Braised Egg. Except for Hawkeye Barton, the original Avengers are almost assembled. However, the atmosphere in the at the moment research room is not very good. In Avengers 1, the early Avengers did not have the concept of a team, and there were more or less rifts between everyone. The most typical is Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. There is also Bruce Banner, who everyone is on guard against, and Thor, the brother of the prisoner Luigi. A seemingly peaceful team, but full of cracks. As long as there is an opportunity, it will be completely fried. However, this opportunity is simple and easy to say, and difficult to say. Because everyone is an adult, even if there is dissatisfaction in their hearts, they will not vent it if they want to, not to mention that almost everyone who can stay here except Thor is the peak of IQ and EQ. But very precisely, this opportunity has always been lurking beside them. Therefore, the team completely quarreled. We found evidence that you used the Tesseract to research weapons. Bruce Banner and Tony found Nick Fury and took out the evidence that Tesseract was used to study weapons, and pointed the finger at Nick Fury. As a party against the war, they absolutely resist this kind of behavior. Not long ago, some outsiders invaded my shield and blew up a pier. From then on, I knew that there are not only humans in this world, but also other people who are better than us in many aspects, such as that bounty hunter. How can we restrain him? And Nick Fury is not to be outdone, targeting Thor and Loki, 2 aliens who invade the Earth. In fact, what Nick Fury said is also reasonable, but it is a bit unkind to hide it from the Avengers, and he is too controlling. Even now, he still has the idea of using force to threaten Su Zaicheng in his hands. Thor's IQ may not be particularly high compared to Tony's, but it depends on who he compares with. Compared with ordinary people, he is almost perfect except for being a little reckless, so he immediately found a reason to refute Nick Fury. It was your study of Tesseract that made Loki and his allies notice the Earth, because once you start to study Tesseract, it means that you want to start the battle of advanced civilization. As for the bounty hunter, Nick Fury, sometimes you should take care of your little thoughts. Some people are destined to be impossible to be controlled by you and threatened by you. The last sentence drew strong approval from everyone, including Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff, who has always supported Black Eggs. They are all people who have seen Su Zaicheng's strength. There is a saying that is good: it is better to be broken than to be whole. They don't think that a strong man of this level will not have his own arrogance, and will want to be controlled by an ordinary person. Want to control this kind of person? 10 Carelessness is to fall into the abyss of the abbot. The premise of controlling the strong is that you are stronger than him. Nick Fury also wanted to argue, but at the moment he himself was a little hypocritical. In this way, the scene became more and more chaotic, and the first-generation Avengers evolved from public grievances to private grievances. Tony and Steve scolded each other and got into an offer fight. Natasha Romanoff speaks for Black Braised Egg. Bruce Banner was complaining about something that happened to him, suppressing his anger to keep from turning himself into a Hulk. They were all arguing, but they didn't notice that the mind gem inlaid in Loki's scepter on the table next to them was shining with a strange light. That's right, mind gem influenced them. Just flickering lightly, the cracks in their hearts are infinitely enlarged, until they are completely advanced, they didn't realize until the end that they became so irritable when they were affected. Just when the Avengers are scolding each other. On the other side, Hawkeye Barton, controlled by Loki, has already found the location of the S.H.I.E.L.D. flight base in a fighter plane. Don't ask where the fighter planes came from, but S.H.I.E.L.D. has made too many enemies. If you just call on them, there are countless people willing to help Loki and Barton destroy S.H.I.E.L.D. Whoosh, Barton's eyes are as beautiful as jade, which is a symbol of his being controlled. In the fighter plane, the bow was fully drawn, and the arrow equipped with a super powerful bomb accurately shot at the position near the super large turbine supporting the flight of the base. Once this place is blown up, many connected places there will always be problems, and the consequences will be unimaginable. Naturally, Loki couldn't fight unprepared. First of all, it is to disturb the enemy's military spirit and make them fight among themselves. Secondly, it is to use the psychic scepter to lock the location of this large base. In the end, it is to let the controlled Hawkeye Barton appear, blow up one of the base's turbines, completely anger Bruce Banner, let him incarnate as Hulk, and destroy the base. Now, just after Avengers was established, it will be completely destroyed. As it turns out, he did. Boom boom boom. Power huge amounts of small bombs explode suddenly. In that instant, the turbine was destroyed, and half of the base was blown up. The terrifying impact force also hit the small research room where the Avengers quarreled. The Avengers were blown away. Luckily no one suffered any serious injuries, at best a few scrapes, and Natasha Romanoff's foot was pinned down. The bright research room became extremely dim, disgusted and confused, with red lights flickering. "Put on your armor," Steve Rogers said to Tony as he fell together. The last time he said this, he wanted to fight Tony one-on-one, but within a few minutes he had changed his meaning. "I think so." Tony was blown a little bit, but it was still Tony after all. After reacting quickly, he ran towards the place where Mark's armor was placed. And other than that, everyone else was fried. Especially Bruce Banner next to Natasha Romanoff. He just lay there, breathing heavily, as if he wanted to endure some impulse. Natasha Romanoff was a little flustered, and hurriedly said, "Bruce? You have to persevere, or you will fall into Loki's hands. We'll be fine." Unfortunately, her words didn't work for Hulk. Bruce Banner's current strength has not reached the level that can suppress Hulk, or he and Hulk have not reached the wonderful relationship that was later. Whenever the mood strikes, the Hulk will show up. Like now. Suffering from a bomb attack and feeling in danger, Hulk wants to show up to protect Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner's breathing was getting faster, thicker, and less human. The green skin on the body gradually appeared. What? There was a roar that spread throughout the base. Bruce Banner broke off his clothes, and officially turned into a Green Titan Hulk. Natasha Romanoff was stunned for a moment, and immediately removed the thing that was pressing on her feet. Escape. The battle lasted only about half an hour. Tony saved the number 3 engine turbine, and the base is back up and running. But S.H.I.E.L.D. suffered heavy losses. Bruce Banner and Thor are missing. Loki flees. Phil Coulson, who was Nick Fury's most important confidant, was killed in battle, and Loki used a scepter to pierce his heart and let his heart cool. But just like the last words he said before he died, if you don't give them some motivation, they will never be united. News of Phil Coulson's death spread. Tony, Steve, and Natasha Romanoff all seemed a little unbelievable. It seemed that Phil Coulson, who had been arranging things for them at the last moment, disappeared so suddenly. Compared to Nick Fury, Phil Coulson, an agent who looks a bit dull, is a bridge to contact the original Avengers, and they all have a little affection for Phil Coulson. In addition, Loki, who spent $3 billion to catch, escaped. There was no news from Tesseract, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. base almost crashed. Suddenly, an atmosphere called sadness permeated everyone's hearts. In the command room, in front of the round table, we're blind. Communications are broken, the Rubik's Cube cannot be found, and Banner and Thor are missing. Loki, which cost $3 billion to capture, has brought us such a terrible blow. Speaking of the last sentence, Nick Fury felt pain and discomfort in addition to mourning the death of Phil Coulson. Spend $3 billion captured Loki. I thought it could be controlled at will, but I didn't expect that just a wave of shock caused the newly formed Avengers team to fall apart. The two disappeared, and even the base used to command the spaceship almost crashed. $3 billion? It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. Nick Fury thought of what Thor had said to him not long ago. Bounty hunter. Nick Fury, sometimes you should accept your little thoughts. Some people are destined to be impossible to be controlled by you and threatened by you. He sighed helplessly. Bounty hunter? I'm afraid you have already expected this scene, right? There's nothing I can do. I lost my best confidant, and maybe I did it myself. That's right. We originally planned to use the Rubik's Cube to make weapons, but I didn't bet on that, but on a more risky project. That's my power, Stark should know. Tony and Steve's eyes didn't know where to stare. Their eyes were unfocused, and they seemed to be thinking about something. We're aboard. The Avengers program. The idea is to bring together the best people in the world and see if they can make a bigger difference. When we needed them most, they were able to pull together and stand with me against an enemy I couldn't be sure of defeating. Phil Coulson believed in this ideal until his death. He believed in heroes. Nick Fury turned his gaze to Tony. Tony's eyes were deep. Maybe this was the first time in his life that he was so serious, except after being captured by terrorists. He stood up abruptly and left here straight away. Oh. Nick Fury with hands behind his back. It's probably a corny concept. This battle. The Avengers have two paths to go. First, since then, the Avengers have been decadent and disbanded on the spot, waiting for the Earth to be invaded, and then everyone is defeated one by one, either being controlled and reduced to slaves, or dying in the resistance. Stand after breaking. Only after dying can you be reborn. This time it happened very suddenly. Su Zaicheng didn't notice either. Definitely, he wouldn't have cared if he'd noticed. It's a must for Avengers. At most, he would laugh secretly in his heart. Nick Fury really got screwed this time. Is he married? In the SHIELD base, Steve asked. No, Tony seemed a little absent-minded. He has a girlfriend who plays the cello. As the Avenger that Phil Coulson came into contact with, and Phil Coulson originally met Pepper again, he and Phil Coulson obviously have the best relationship among the Avengers except Nick Fury. I am very depressed. Steve crossed his arms and looked at the ground. He looks nice. He's so stupid. Tony shrugged. Why? Just for faith. Steve looked at Tony, puzzled. He takes on Loki alone. Tony's mouth is very poisonous, but under this poisonous tongue, he is unwilling to accept this fact. He's doing his job. Although the purpose of Steve and Tony's idea is the same, but the process is inherently different. He could understand Phil Coulson, but Tony couldn't. Beyond his ability range, he should wait for reinforcements, he should. Having said that, Tony suddenly didn't know what to say, and put down his hand helplessly. Sometimes, you can't help it. I've heard that before. Is this the first time you've seen a soldier die? Hearing this sentence, Tony's facial muscles trembled slightly, and he said in a very heavy tone, but we are not soldiers. Steve looked at him. Tony calmed down a bit, then said, I'm not going to be at Fury's mercy. Me too. Steve nodded. Both he and Loki are responsible for Phil Coulson's death, but for the bigger picture now, Loki needs a source of energy. It appears we briefly agreed. Tony seemed to remember something. He wants the Zhang Yang personality. It doesn't matter. Steve seemed a little helpless. Why did Tony still like to talk at this moment? No, it's important. It's just his personality. Tony looked at Steve with a bewildered expression on his face. He knows all about our background. Why? Let's fight among ourselves. Yeah, beat them all. That's great, but the only way he knows how to win. Just beat us all. Tony continued. He wants to beat us, and he wants someone else to witness this moment. He wants an audience. Yes, it's different in Stuttgart. Steve wasn't bad either. He understood what Tony was trying to say, and his eyes lit up. Yes, that's just a trailer. Today's is the highlight. Tony looked like he had figured it all out, and kept clapping his hands. Loki is a standard egomaniac. He wants flowers, applause, and a landmark building so that his name can stand high. Speaking of which, Tony's words stopped suddenly. This bastard. There are many landmark buildings in New York, but how many have energy sources? To be precise, there is only one. Over there, the mountain is about to rain, and the building is full of wind, and it is about to enter a state of combat readiness. Su Zaicheng is working very hard to analyze all kinds of magic. Thousands of miles frozen, meteorite flames. This kind of group attack skills is not easy to practice. But what is very nice is that the magic copied by the copy eye does not hesitate to practice. After all, the principle of copying eye duplication magic is to directly analyze the composition, form, nature and power. Once the analysis is completed, he will directly become a master-level brother in using these magics. According to Su Zaicheng's current estimates, if he uses his full strength to cast meteorite flames or freeze thousands of miles, it should be enough to cover the entire Queen's district, and the power is quite powerful. It's a pity that this large-scale magic does not have the function of avoiding teammates. After all, this is reality, and it's not a game. Only by getting famous can you kill teammates. And Jiali would not impatiently cast all kinds of magic on Su Zicheng. Black magic, there is also white magic, there is damage magic, and there is healing magic. In Jiali's setting, there is an item, almost unlimited energy, using some magic that is too small for her. Even if she uses it continuously all the time, her energy will not be weakened in the slightest. In short, it covers a wide range, making Su Zicheng feel that apart from the fact that the copy eye is really easy to use, he also feels that Jiali is awesome. Even the copying eyes are so stable. What kind of scene will it be if you are lucky enough to get the eyes of Jianjigu? I can't imagine it, I can't imagine it. Take a look at Thanos and directly copy his titanic physique. Take a look at Odin, copy the power of Odin. Take a look at Dormammu and replicate all of Dormammu's magical powers? Is it possible to take a look at infinite gems and replicate the power of infinite gems? Sometimes the setting of things in the second dimension is really compared to Marvel, and the level of nonsense is not weak at all. At noon, Su Zicheng used the little magic happily. What he didn't notice was, Jiali's expression seemed to be a little tangled, but she recovered quickly. Zi Chang, I'm going to the bathroom. Su Zicheng didn't respond immediately, and nodded indifferently. Go, come back soon. He seems to be addicted to magic and cannot extricate himself. She didn't even react to what Gali said. To the restroom. Jiali will not lie, saying that eating bread is more fresh and refined than this reason. If Su Zicheng is not addicted to magic and cannot extricate herself, just expose her in minutes. She is an existence comparable to a cosmic god. When does she need to go to the toilet? This level of nonsense is not weaker than OAA saying that she can't beat Tony. But there is no way, magic is too new for him, it is like a toy, and he can't let go of it. In addition, besides Jiali being a bit more powerful, her performance is not particularly strong. After all, if she really wants to show it, then the earth is not enough for Li to play with. Therefore, Jiali is basically the same as ordinary people except that she is a little strong and eats a lot. What Su Zicheng didn't really know about Jiali was that under his preconceptions, he naturally thought that going to the toilet was nothing. 1,000 miles frozen. Su Zicheng gave a soft drink, the pattern of the pentagram in his eyes flickered slightly, and a chill burst out suddenly. The temperature dropped to freezing point at this moment. Swish swish, a goose feather snow floated in midair, gently falling on Su Zicheng's body and melting slowly. With Su Zicheng as the center, pieces of ice gradually condensed, and everything in the yard turned into ice at this moment. It was supposed to be a hot wind, but after this moment, it turned into a cold wind after blowing, whistling, and it hurt like a knife cut on the face. The yard and the outside of at the moment villa have formed a scene of ice and fire. It was a slightly higher temperature outside, but there was a vast expanse of whiteness on the frozen ice in the yard, and the biting cold wind pierced the soul like a needle. Su Zicheng stood in the middle of the frozen courtyard, feeling the unbearable low temperature. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This is just a small test of his skills. As mentioned earlier, if he uses all his strength, he can at least make the entire Queen's district fall into heavy snow, and the surrounding things will gradually freeze outwards from him, until the entire Queen's district is turned into a city of ice and snow. Meteorite flames. Looking around, Su Zicheng gave a soft drink. Rumble. At this moment, there were bursts of roars in the air, as if the power before the rain. Next moment, small meteorites condensed from fire elements fell into Su Zicheng's courtyard with long flame tails. The temperature quickly changed from low temperature to extremely high temperature, just like turning from a city of ice and snow into a flaming mountain, enough to roast a person alive. The surrounding ice and snow melted quickly, turning into puddles of water, like after the rain. The file size of these small meteorites is really small, only about 20 centimeters each. Definitely, if you use all your strength, it is impossible to keep them so small. Su Zicheng feels that at least a small meteorite with a diameter of 2 or 3 meters can be condensed, and the radius is not impossible. The meteorite rain dragging flames is over. The terrifyingly high temperature still scorched the surroundings. For example, a big green tree that has been standing in the yard has experienced the unbearable high temperature of the plant again after experiencing an instant freeze. Although it did not catch fire, the dried ginger has become a ball, and the lush leaves have turned yellow. Looking extremely depressed. Tisk. Su Zicheng smashed his mouth, walked to the side of the big tree, and patted the trunk. It's really unbearable for such a green life to disappear like this. The palm of his hand that was pressing the tree trunk was slowly covered with green fluorescent light, and a stream of healing penetrated into the tree trunk, plus the small stove that Su Zaicheng specially opened for it. This big tree is so miraculously brought back to life. The tree, which had been extremely sluggish, slowly stands up straight. The brown branches became as thick as the mouth of a bowl, straight, and the lush green leaves opened at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the brown leaves all over the tree it falls and turns into nutrients to support the tree king. Among them, the change of the trunk is the most obvious. From one person hugging to two people hugging file size. And as the big tree came back to life, a breath of greenery bloomed, and the grass around the big tree became upright and swaying, full of greenery, which made people feel happy just looking at it. Su Zaicheng nodded in satisfaction and let out a breath. He's ready to call it quits. By the way, where's Carrie? Su Zaicheng suddenly came to his senses, looked around, and found that Jiali was not around him. Is it in the villa? Wait. Su Zaicheng suddenly thought of what Jiali said. I'm going to the bathroom. Are you kidding me? You, a cosmic god, need to go to the bathroom? Su Zaicheng's expression changed slightly, and a bad feeling suddenly rose in his heart. Just now I was too obsessed with the mysteries of magic and couldn't extricate myself, but now that I realized that I was really stupid just now. Obvious. Gali doesn't need to go to the bathroom. It was just an excuse for her to walk away. Su Zaicheng hurried to the villa. He didn't start looking for Jiali in the villa in a panic. Instead, he immediately launched his telepathy ability and carefully searched for Jiali in the villa. Once. 2 times. 3 times. Nothing. If you can't find telepathy, use Hawkeye. The God's perspective mode was activated, and Su Zaicheng instantly captured the scene of the entire suburb of Manhattan. Once. Twice. 3 times. Still nothing. Su Zaicheng's expression became a little ugly, and he began to freely look for Jiali in the villa. He didn't miss any chance. After all, if Jiali wanted to avoid his telepathic detection, he would have absolutely no way to find her. I searched carefully several times. Carrie was not found. Instead, he found a note left by Lee. My father came to me and wanted to take me away to solve the problem of hunger. I couldn't refuse him, otherwise, he would eat the earth that I like. After I solve this problem, it will soon become back Jia Liliu. Gali's father came to see her. Who is Jiali's father, the devourer of the planet? This is an authentic god. Galactus came to Earth? Taking Gali away to solve the hunger problem? No wonder I couldn't find Jiali. I didn't even have a breath, so I left the Earth. Su Zaicheng was slightly relieved. At least it can prove that Jiali is very safe now. Don't look at the note that Galactus seems to be threatening little Gali, but anyone who has read the comics knows that Galactus still dotes on his daughter very much, and if he says it is to solve the problem, he is aiming at solving the problem. The only difficulty is that I don't know when it will be resolved. Su Zaicheng shrugged, feeling a little melancholy suddenly. Jiali was noisy before, but now she is gone and deserted. Damn, there is one less person in the family, and I am really not used to it. But who? Improve your strength. Su Zaicheng pouted, his thoughts were a bit contradictory. I hope that Jiali will come back soon, and I hope to come back later. When I see Jiali again, my own strength can already stand shoulder to shoulder with her. I glanced at the time. Well, it's just afternoon, you should be able to go to class, right? Su Zaicheng seemed to think of something, and immediately put the melancholy feeling behind him. Anyway, it's not that Jiali won't come back, she just went to solve the problem with her father, so there's nothing to be melancholy about. The top priority now is another matter. Let's go to school. Today is not the weekend. Peter, Ned, and MJ are all in school. Life is different from Su Zaicheng, a high school student with colorful life. Little Spider-Man is still developing in a nasty way at this stage, so in fact, there are basically no other extracurricular activities other than wearing an ugly uniform and going out to fight for justice. Either strike up a conversation with MJ, or build blocks with Ned. Su Zaicheng's life is so colorful, little Spider-Man can't compare with him now. But well, each has its own way of coping. Although the talkative little Spider-Man has a strong desire to show off, he knows how to hide it. Well, even in the end, he was caught by Tony easily. This trip to Su Zaicheng is not to go to class to experience leisure time. When is the time? The rest will not be now, Peter. After arriving at the door of the class, Su Zaicheng stood outside and shouted. It's class time now, so his shout directly made the students and teachers notice him. The class is now attended by a middle-aged black woman who naturally knows Su Zaicheng. Since Su Zaicheng donated a wave of money to the school last time, making the principal kneel and lick him, his reputation among the school teachers has spread. Everyone knows that this is a very rich student. In a capitalist country like the United States, money is basically everything, so basically no one dares to mess with him. Even these teachers turned a blind eye to Su Zaicheng. Definitely, Su Zaicheng actually didn't cause any trouble to them, at most he just didn't come to class. He didn't have any of those bad students, so it basically made no difference to the teachers. Calls me. Hearing his own name in class, Peter shook his body reflexively, and then looked at Su Zaicheng, who was standing at the door in confusion. I have something to ask you, come out quickly. Su Zaicheng waved his hand. What? Peter looked at the black teacher with a bewildered expression. What's going on, so arrogant? Black teachers also know about Su Zaicheng's background, so even if Su Zaicheng yelled in class, they just pretended they didn't hear them, ignored them, and continued to give lectures on their own. In this way, under the watchful eyes of everyone, Peter stood up bravely and trotted to the door. When passing by Ned, he also saw Ned giving him a thumbs up with an adoring smile on his face. After all, in front of students of this age, what else is there to skip class in front of the teacher? In this regard, Peter could only slap his thumb off to express his speechlessness. Zaicheng, what do you want me to do? Peter closed the door of the classroom, looked at Su Zaicheng and said, I still have to continue the class. It would be bad if I just leave in class and cause Majay's dislike. Oh, right, it seems that you haven't seen me for a few days. Why did you come to class? Also, I saw you buying food at a fast food restaurant a few days ago, and you brought a little girl with you. Peter showed the characteristic of chatterbox to the fullest, regardless of whether it is related or not. Bala 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 said it out. Su Zaicheng frowned, and said, Peter, can you stop talking and let me say something? No problem, no problem. Peter pulled out a smile, and said, say it, talk it out. Run away, you know. Su Zaicheng said, immediately take Ned, MJ, and Aunt May to escape together, and escape as far as possible in the opposite direction from Manhattan. He came here this time to remind little Spider-Man to leave this place with Ned, MJ, and Aunt May. Although the film did not say whether the incident spread to other areas outside Manhattan, Su Zaicheng had to be cautious. The Chittori's army is not too elite compared to the army on Earth. Starting from the invasion of Manhattan, it is very likely that it will spread to Brooklyn, Queens, and Brooks, which border Manhattan. In other words, this is not a problem of one district at all, but the disaster of the whole New York. It is best to escape as soon as possible. After all, even in the movie, the whole army of the first-generation Avengers could hardly stop the attack of the Chittori army. The Chittori army was like locusts crossing the border, and everything they passed was completely destroyed. Escape. Good. Peter nodded immediately, ready to rush to the class, then froze suddenly, turned his head to look at Su Zaicheng in doubt. Why are you fleeing? Isn't it safe here? The destruction of the Earth? The destruction of New York, or terrorists, gangsters, or foreigners, star invasion. You really guessed it right. The corners of Su Zaicheng's mouth twitched wildly. Manhattan will be invaded by aliens immediately. Hurry up and escape with Ned, MJ and Aunt May. If Peter wasn't still his friend, he wouldn't bother to come here to remind him. In case one of Ned, MJ, and Aunt May accidentally hangs up, Peter can't help become blackened little Spider-Man. Okay. Peter made an okay gesture, looking suddenly enlightened. No wonder his spider telepathy has not stopped since this morning. Although it has been very weak, it has indeed sensed danger in the direction of Hatton. If it's an alien invasion, it makes sense. Well, in fact, even if it wasn't an alien invasion, Peter would still try to find a reason to run with his friends. However, why would Zaicheng know? Peter was a little puzzled, but quickly dismissed the thought. Now was not the time to think about it. Ned. MJ. Let's go. He imitated Su Zaicheng, stood at the door of the class, and called Ned and Majay's names at once. Now, everyone's eyes were on the two of them. Ned and MJ looked around in bewilderment, then stood up slowly, and walked to the door of the class together. Shet. Peter, you are so cool. Ned, the little black fat man, couldn't help but whispered as soon as he stepped out of the class door. Peter. What's the matter? If it's okay, I have to go back to class. MJ frowned slightly. It doesn't matter, you two go with me first. Peter thought about it and couldn't think of any excuse to take the two of them away. After all, he was just a chatterbox, not a fool. He could talk about alien invasions that sounded like science fiction, so he had to hold the hands of the two of them. Elbows are pulled hard. Peter, are you going to skip class with me? This is my first time skipping class. Peter. What are you going to do?